Good evening. Welcome to the Boxborough Planning Board meeting. It's 7:03, February 2nd, 2026. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom. It can be accessed via our agenda, and it can also, if you're not using a computer, you can go ahead and there's a call-in number at the bottom of our agenda you can use if you're not using accessing via video. So I'm going to start off by taking roll call. As I see you, Cindy Markowitz.
Markowitz present.
Rich Gazzardi.
Gazzardi present.
Mark White.
White present.
And I believe that Chris Dowdy will be joining us in a few minutes.
I just got here, so.
Oh, hi, Chris. Yeah, Chris Dowdy.
Present.
Okay, thanks. And Werner present. Terrific. So let's start out by inviting the members of the public. If there's anyone that would like to comment on any item that's not listed currently on the agenda, please feel free to raise your hand at this time, and we'll call on you. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we can move right into our. No, we can't. How about some meeting minutes, Alec?
I'll pull those up now.
Thank you.
Starting with January 12th, the first of the two sets.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anybody have comments on the January 12th meeting minutes?
I did. If you go to line 70, Alec, it just looks like a typo. Mr. Gazzardi moved to authorize the chair to review the decision is in final form. Just, I would add its. I'm sorry, remove the word is and add its after the word in. So it should be the decision in its final form.
Anything else, Rich?
Nope, that was it.
Others? Any other comments? Okay, I would entertain a motion. Cindy, do you have a comment? I just saw you on mute.
No, I was ready to.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 12th, 2026 meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Cindy, seconded by Rich. Any discussion? Okay, I'm hearing none. As I see you, Mark White.
White aye.
Chris Dowdy.
Dowdy aye.
Rich Gazzardi.
Gazzardi aye.
Cindy Markowitz.
Markowitz aye.
And Werner aye. All right, thank you. Well, that's one down. So it's 7:06, so we can go ahead to our public hearing. For 984 and 996 Massachusetts Ave and Sarah's Way and 38 Sarah's Way site plan review and stormwater management permit in accordance with MGL Chapter 40A and Boxborough zoning bylaw 2.5 site plan approval in the Boxborough stormwater bylaw. The Boxborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing to review the application submitted by Level Design Group LLC on behalf of the applicant 894 Mass Ave LLC for the proposed landscape contractor yard. I understand, Alec, that we have they have asked for a continuance. I mean, extension request for that. Would you like to expand upon that for the board?
Yes, in speaking with the applicant and providing them the necessary paperwork, both parties felt it was reasonable for them to request a continuance of this public hearing. That would be a continuance until April 6th with a deadline of an extension to the board's deadline for decision even further to May 6th. This strategically puts the next public hearing date after the town meeting vote and the ballot vote on the properties in question for a potential site of the fire station. Both parties agreed that while this is proceeding, it didn't make sense for them to invest further money in the application. However, this allows the applicant to reserve their rights to continue the public hearing if either vote should fail.
All right, thank you, Alec. What does the board need to do? Do we need to vote on approval for that?
Yes, you would seek a motion to approve the continuance to April 6th as written.
Okay. Before I go ahead and do that, I'm going to open it up to Cindy Markowitz. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have this question that I think came up once before. It looks like the applicant is requesting the continuance till April 6th and a decision date by May 6th, but correct me if I'm wrong, we have 30 days, I believe, from the close of the public hearing, not necessarily a fixed date. So I'd like to suggest that we maintain that option to have 30 days from the close of the public hearing and not necessarily a fixed date for a decision.
Yes. So a future extension of this public hearing would further continue all of that out. But by the letter of the law, you do have to explicitly state the deadline for both. Where we're outside the initial deadline to close the public hearing, we also have to extend the deadline for written decision. So this is the formality of doing both. If at the time of that hearing, the applicant was to demand the close of hearing, you would have 30 days from that date to then draft a decision. So this is the most official and appropriate way to do this extension. And so I do recommend the board sign this verbatim.
I guess it's not clear to me. That doesn't jive. I have to look at the letter again, but with an explicit date, I don't want to feel locked in that I guess I'm not understanding why we have to indicate an explicit date by which the decision must be rendered.
Yeah. If the board does not list both explicit dates, we do risk administrative failure on behalf of the board in rendering a decision on the application. And this is what we recommend the board sign.
I still have a problem with that. Can we modify that extension letter to indicate or as otherwise 30 days from the close of the public hearing? Can we modify that letter? And it just seems like we're giving up our rights to something that's in our bylaw that allows for. So I don't understand why we would do that.
So we have signed these letters before written this way. I guarantee to the board, you are not giving up any rights the way this is written. We just have to be very explicit with the language, and given the sensitivity around this project thus far, I do recommend the board go with what's written.
Can you bring up the letter, Alex?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same.
So the language in question is this last paragraph specifically.
I just need to remind everybody that I'm recused from this because I'm in a butter, so I can't speak to any of this.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to insert after deadline to render a decision to May 6, 2026, I'd like to insert or 30 days from the close of the public hearing per our bylaw. I understand you're trying to make this clean, but it feels like, and this happened in a prior situation where I felt I hadn't seen the request letter, but somehow we got locked into a date that did not allow us for 30 days from the close of the public hearing. So I'm trying to avoid that scenario again.
Go ahead, Rich.
Wouldn't the applicant have to, so they're agreeing to a continuance of the hearing to April 6th, which would assume then a May 6th decision rendering. If we were to say, 30 days beyond the date of the continuance, then the April 6th continuance is in question, right? Like, I'm trying to, so when we get to the hearing, either the applicant is willing to extend beyond April 6th or they're not. And if they extend beyond April 6th, then naturally there would be an extension to the May 6th. All they're agreeing to right now is we're going to extend to April 6th.
Yeah, because May 6th is 30 days after April 6th. So the presumption is that the hearing would be closed during that session. If it's not, it's continued, and the motion to continue would also slide out any decision. And I think it's because various deadlines have already passed. That's why we have to have a specific date mentioned in the motions. So it is the same. It is the 30-day window. It's there.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable. And also this reference to section 3.6, is that the correct reference? Sorry.
Yes, section 3.6 is where the board lists out its allowance for 30 days to render a decision.
In the close of the hearing, right? From the close of the hearing. So, I mean, that might be it right there, Cindy, the hook, I guess.
I'm sorry, describe the hook again, please.
Well, if they're referencing the 3.6, right? And that describes that it's from the close of the hearing that the top clock starts ticking,
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah, that's explaining where May 6th comes from. It's pursuant to section 3.6, which is 30 days after April 6th, that hearing date. This is all on the presumption that the hearing is completed and closed on that day. If it's not, the applicant needs to be okay with that, and we'd be making a motion to extend everything anyway.
Right. They would always have to approve an extension beyond April 6th. That's not a presumed thing right now. I'm ready to make a motion. Alec, well, I'm sorry. Can I just motion this thing? I move to accept the continuance filed by the applicant for 984 Massachusetts Avenue to April 6, 2026.
Do we need to list all three addresses?
No, you're covered.
I'm sorry, could you read the motion again, Rich?
Yeah, I move to accept the continuance filed by the applicant at 984 Massachusetts Avenue, LLC, to April 6th, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion?
So I can agree with that motion. What I'm struggling with is perhaps the form of this letter. I don't know if this is a form letter that the town has, Alec, but I'm struggling with that reference to a specific date for decision. And I would ask that I'm okay with the motion because the motion is just for the continuance, but I'm not comfortable with the form letter.
Madam Chairperson, if I could, it's at the direction of Special Land Use Counsel Adam Costa that we explicitly list the dates. I cannot revise this letter without going against the request of counsel in this one. I'm being told to play this one very much by the letter of the law.
Okay, but I guess we had a situation recently where we were advised to close the hearing because the letter extension requested a decision date. And I don't want to find ourselves in that same situation where we're required to close a hearing the night of the continuance because of a date that's in the letter that doesn't follow our site plan rules and regs.
Right. And so to offer guidance as to why that happened, it's because that other letter did not explicitly list a date that we then extended the deadline for decision to. So this letter, in fact, corrects that error.
Okay.
By not previously explicitly listing that date, we voided the board's coverage and guarantee to be able to take their time drafting the decision. This gives you exactly that.
And my motion is just to accept the continuance.
Yep.
If I mean that's all that's all I need. I think that's all we need to do, right? The letter, what they submitted is that they're willing to continue to April, whatever the date was. It's not up there. With the decision by 30 days after, that's fine. They can put that in there. That is, in fact, the way it works. But if we're going to have to ask for an extension if we can't get everything resolved at that meeting, they can always reject that, and then we just have to make a decision. So I think the motion's okay, right, Alec?
Yes, Madam Chairperson, I don't want to belabor the point, so I'm just going to reiterate. My recommendation is that the board just pass this vote and I can go ahead and sign the letter as written. This is what Attorney Costa is directing us to do here if we want to accept this continuation.
Is there any other further discussion on this topic?
Yes, the language in 3.6 says a decision shall be rendered within 30 days of the close of the public hearing. That is a planning board decision when to close the public hearing, not an applicant agreement. So just want to be clear. And again, I feel like we were in an fortunate situation the last time. I understand, Alec, you're trying to rectify that. This doesn't feel exactly right to me. I'm willing to accept the motion as is and going to vote on the motion because the motion is just the continuation, but I will continue to be concerned about the language that was in that letter for future, but I'm willing to move on and do the vote.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'm hearing none. So as I see you, Chris Doughty.
Doughty, aye.
Mark White.
He's recused.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. Mark White is recused from this project. Rich Gazzardi.
Gazzardi, aye.
And Werner, aye. Okay. All set.
I don't know if you asked my vote. I think.
Oh, Cindy.
You get to vote, Cindy.
Cindy, yes, please.
Markowitz, aye.
Okay, thank you. 4-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to all the good stuff. The planning board at our last meeting bubbled up a whole bunch of great, exciting new things that we're taking on, hopefully for our next annual town meeting and or in the fall. We should have one. Should we pull up that list? I'm just thinking about the easiest way to do this, Alec. You know, we bubbled up a list as a board, and maybe we can just start going through from the top, unless somebody disagrees. I think, you know, I, for one, have a couple of things that I want to take on, but I need to keep working on them. They're not ready for unveiling yet. I'm going to need a little bit of time to pull them together. So, but I know that we did have a fair amount of information that came in from other board members.
Absolutely. I'll pull up the spreadsheet now.
Thank you.
Hopefully it doesn't crash on me this time.
Okay, awesome. Rich, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. And you can take them out of order if you like. But however you'd like to start going through some of your topics here.
Sure. Yeah, if we could move the order around. So the first one is bringing back up a table that Alec started, but I'm not sure I want to start there because that's more of a kind of roll up your sleeves, grind through a table. I've actually put some language, working with Alec, some language on the table for a couple of these. So to your point, taking things out of order, it probably makes sense to go for Mass Ave zoning, which, Alec, if you pull up the document, do you have the document?
Yes, I have everything set aside here. So would you like me to start with section 4.1.3 proposed B2 district?
Yes, let's start there.
Okay. And I'll also bring up simultaneously the map in a different document if you want me to jump to it.
Yep.
Bear with me.
Let's start with the bylaw. So this is going back, members, this is going back to last year. So trying to think, Chris, you were not on the board, so it was Kathy who was on the board. But this is going back to the whole notion of the industrial commercial district. And actually, Alec, it probably does make sense to pull the map up first now that I mention this. So just to refresh us all, there's about 6 different zoning districts along Mass Ave, along that corridor. And this is specifically addressing the industrial commercial district. And Alex got it up here. Thank you, Alec. So what the pink, you can ignore the pink, that's Office Park District. The light, the lime green, I guess, is the industrial commercial district. So this is the one section of Mass Ave that has industrial commercial district, which obviously includes the most, heaviest, largest of potential uses. So going back to what we talked about, I wanted to do a couple things. One is put it back on the table. 2, simplify it, and sort of take it into bite-sized chunks. So there's a couple things that are different from last time, but fundamentally, let's start with the map. So the map focuses in on the key parcels that are really relevant here. So if you look way over on the left, there's the little triangle on the left-hand corner on the north side of Mass Ave. That is the gas station. And then there's a parcel next to it, which I think is a right-of-way. And then there's a parcel next to that, which is, frankly, the right-of-way can stay. If we can look at the ownership on that parcel, Alec, and choose to either put it in or take it out. The property that you're over right now is developable land, and then the parcel over to the right of that is currently the Taylor School. So, this is currently industrial commercial, and the proposal would be to switch it to a business district more consistent with what we see on Mass Ave, the B and the B1 districts. I've left alone the industrial commercial up in where Paddock Estates is, because that's subject to a special permit for a 40B project, and it's not going to be anything. The one parcel that's closest to Mass Ave is basically the leach field, and then the parcel above that is basically the condominium complex. So that what that land is pretty much cast in stone for the next 80 years, 100 years. So,
hey, Rich,
yeah,
Rich, my apologies to interrupt you. I'm getting communications separately that some participants on Zoom may not be able to see the screen share. Madam Chairperson, can you confirm, are you seeing my screen share at the moment?
Yes.
I am.
Nick, can you confirm, are you seeing my screen share on the broadcast? Nick might have stepped away. So it sounds like it's split. There might be a couple of participants in the audience. Rebecca, I don't know if you just want to go around and confirm with each board member that they can see the screen.
Cindy, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Chris?
Yeah, good here.
Mark? Yes. And Rich, yes.
Yes, I can see the screen. So I left the Paddock Estates alone. And then if you could continue down Mass Ave on the south side to the east of Burroughs Road, there's a large parcel there. It's probably heavily wetlands, but it is industrial commercial, and there could potentially be developable land there. And then the next several parcels are developed to some extent, existing operations that are in the industrial commercial district. And so the proposal would be to change those to the B2 district to address any future development beyond what's there now. You'll notice there's some IC components there. I'm not touching whatever the address is that we just continued the hearing on, because that's subject to it's potentially land that is up for discussion on a purchase. It's in litigation, so I'm not proposing that we do anything with that. And then there's a couple of slivers that are part of larger parcels of land, much larger parcels of land. Those slivers represent like 1% of the total portion of that land, so it's not developable, and so it's not worth even talking about. So the focus is really on the full parcels that are seen in the green. Any questions on the map?
Yeah, Rich, a couple questions. One is, right now, some of the dark green bleeds over the property lines. Was that by design, or are you just taking the old shading and copying it over? Because again, I think there's some, it's slightly bleeding onto other parcels, and I don't know if that was your intent.
No, the plan is and so Alec, you can keep me honest here. So maybe it's artwork, but the plan was to encompass the whole parcel. So to start to avoid split parcels. I think that line might be a current zoning line. That might be the IC line as it exists today. It's not zoning parcels, so it's maybe causing some confusion. The zoning parcels are the darker lines.
That's correct, Rich. And apologies, as the person who drafted the map, apologies that I didn't make that clear. The line that you're referring to that splits these parcels seemingly, that is the IC district line. The proposed B2 district, as it's shown on the screen, strictly follows parcel lines. So if you see a break, that's because of the underlying and pre-existing zoning. This is designed exclusively around parcel lines.
Okay, so where it's bleeding over, am I seeing that right? Is it bleeding over, or is that just, those are actual parcels?
Those are
like
full
that,
parcels.
like that
Full
little
parcel.
triangle right where your cursor is? That's a slight little right in there. Yeah, that's a parcel.
Yes,
That's
that's
all
a part
that
of
parcel.
this parcel right here. Yep. Parcel numbers in hindsight would have been helpful
Yes.
to identify. So apologies.
We'll need to do that. We'll take, Alec, we just need to take the action to get parcel numbers written. But if you follow that logic, Cindy, that little green thing,
Yeah.
that's part of the parcel that's below it. That large open space parcel, the lime green thing. Yep. And I'm not going to change that whole parcel. I'm not going to touch that. There's no need to. It's all wet. And then the next parcel is, I believe it's Linskog balancing, that one there. And you can see it today. There's a piece of their parcel that is ag res. So we're basically just making the whole parcel B1 where it spills over. The next one, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to cite all these owners. That might be NTS or the new company there. So yeah, full parcels.
Okay, and I'm just trying to recall when you showed this similar proposal the last time around. Did you have more parcels included at that time?
The Paddock Estates was included. Including the auxiliary, the infrastructure parcel at Paddock. I believe we included the 985, the Mass Ave parcel that is in, or maybe we came just short of that. No, we might have included it. I think that was included in it. So I pulled that out. I don't believe that little green piece, I think we just kind of cut into that parcel and said, paint it green, which would have turned that whole parcel. So I want to avoid that right now. I'm just trying to focus in on the parcels at hand. So it's more or less the same, Cindy, except Paddock Estates and 980. What, am I getting that address right, Alec? What is that address? Mass Ave.
This is reflected as 996 Mass Ave.
996.
It's part of the so-called master plan of land.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Rich, I missed your initial description as to why the front parts of Paddock Estates are ripe for conversion. If you said the whole thing was just where the entry of the driveway is and all that on Paddock Estates, those two parcels at the.
Yeah. It's basically the parcel on the left is, I believe it's their leach field. It's not developable. It's developed as a housing project, and it'll be a housing project for the next 100 years, plus or minus. I mean, so I don't think we need to deal with that right now or ever. It's got a use. It was approved as a special permit, comprehensive permit. It looks like there's an access way, Cindy.
Right.
From the small triangle on the left where the gas station is and the large parcel on the right, it looks like there's an access road. We can look at ownership on that. I don't know, was that a right of way approved by one of the other property owners, or does that belong to Paddock Estates, Alec?
It's a component of the overall right of way. I don't know the current ownership status, but our assessor's database and the state's assessor's database shows it still in private ownership. So it was a selectable parcel when creating the layer.
Yeah, and we can go back and look. Does it make sense to just leave that piece alone? When we go back, and we can take the action when we put the parcel numbers in there to take another look at that.
Yeah, I think that's just because your description of why you left Paddock Estates alone would seem to me leave those parcels alone as well.
Yeah, and
better.
I understand that, and so you just said the magic words. That's kind of what my focus was. Fewer changes, the better. All right, that's the map. Any other questions on the map? We can cut to the bylaw then.
Rich, just real quick, as we're going through, I'm taking my own notes, especially on the map, because that'll be edits that we'll make in-house. What I'm hearing is we'll need to update this with parcel numbers. I also think it would be pertinent as well to understand existing conditions in the second round if we prepare the same map, but with an aerial photograph, so that board members can distinctly see what is below the zone, so to speak, or on top of the zone.
Does that mean overlay of wetlands and stuff or restrictions?
So we could certainly overlay the wetlands, any easements or restrictions, but rather than just see plain colored boxes,
Oh, understood.
we'd also be able to see the tree canopies and such. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alec.
Bear with me 1 second while I just finish the note.
Rich, before we get into going through like the residential uses and stuff, can you just recap why we are proposing a B2 district and not otherwise adding to a B or B1 district here?
Yeah. So two things. Good question. Two things. One is Cindy said it, minimizing change, right? So if we were to go to a B, straight to the B district, which is literally right across the street from this zone, it would have more material changes to the property. There'd be dimensional changes. There would be a lot of various use changes that are different from what's in the IC district today. I'm trying so to minimize the impact and the changes. The thought was try to keep as much of the IC uses intact by only restricting either through special permit or not allowing the highest intensity, largest footprint uses, like, for example, a warehouse. Today, by right, you can put a warehouse on any of those parcels, assuming that there's no wetlands and all that other stuff. So my proposal is that we would make that a no, which is consistent with the B district. But there are other uses that we would leave alone, and we would potentially add certain uses to it to sort of enhance what can be done in that area. So it's really to minimize. If we just flip to B, then I think we're making more changes and we're putting in new dimensional requirements. I've taken some feedback from the last time we did this, and I pulled out any changes to the dimensional requirements right now. So that's the first reason. The second reason is I do think and this we'll get into as we look at the corridor overall. This is a gateway business district, different from the middle of town or the other side of town. This is right along 495. You can see there's Office Park there. This would be a district that would potentially have different uses than something that's a mile to the east. So it's just reflecting. It's number one, the primary reason is to minimize the changes. Number two is to recognize that this is a gateway, and maybe we choose to at some point change, depending on how we think of it. We could change the zoning to the north side at some point. I'm not proposing that today. So that's why. It's really to just be mindful of the existing uses and not create too much change.
Thank you. Yeah, and to that point, I struggle a little bit starting here. I know there's a number of things to get through when I want to start in the middle of town and work outwards. But regardless, let's keep on going through. I feel like city planning is all about working from the heart of town outward. But you've got your momentum going up, so let's keep going. I know that is going to be impactful to my thoughts about this proposition. That makes sense.
And Rebecca, no, it does. And what I'll say is that I don't think this is the first change. Like, I think, I've tried to basically come up with a minimalist effort to resolve some of the uses that people in town have spoken up against, such as putting a large warehouse in one of these sites, putting a large, commercial landscape contractor in this location, putting a self-storage unit, putting adult uses. So I've really tried to focus on what are those, most intense uses that people have struggled with. And then at the same time, allowing retail use, which is not allowed today in the IC district. So I think to your point, I think there can be multiple steps here. I think one is this is somewhat of a reactive to try to sort of stem a negative from happening and to allow some additional things that are allowed everywhere else on Mass Ave. And then as we go and do the center and work out, and that is another bylaw discussion, village overlay, we can then always come back and say, okay, we're gonna tweak it, or we're gonna change it, and oh, by the way, we're gonna change to the north of it. The whole idea is to get some progress going to address some of the immediate concerns, and then we can always come back and address some of the longer term issues.
Totally understand. And
Okay.
I know you're saying you just explained it so nicely that way, Rich, but my next question before I forget is, do we want to consider any other parcels within like the business district, the B district specifically? I don't know if you've looked at that in a broader scheme or if you've just really tried to keep it concentrated around this area.
For this specific zone, it's just this area because I'll call this this is a transitional zoning map. Moving from getting industrial commercial off of Mass Ave, putting in a district that doesn't go too far. Does it work in other places? I think that's a discussion for the board. I think the board should look at overall uses across the rest of Mass Ave. And that's something we could do, and maybe that's part of the broader strategy. But no, it's just this area. I do think we ought to look at the industrial commercial land that's up on the north side of Liberty Square Road. I think that's an area that is probably something worth looking at. It is what it is today, but is that the future? Something we can talk about too. But I did not propose that here.
Thank you, Rich. Alec, do you want to pull up the document, the proposed revisions to section 4.1.3?
Happy to do so.
Okay, so is this where it begins? So if you notice and they're all red, right? So there's no other color coding. So we're just going to go one by one, and we can go relatively quickly, and you can put a hold when you want to talk about one. So I've again tried to say what I'm trying to, pick what the worst or most negative, outcomes that we've gotten the most negative feedback on and prevent them. Right. And then, or address them, and then try to leave everything else alone. And then where I saw that we could potentially add something, I've added something. So let's just kind of go through it, and I can get on my camera now. So if you go to the top, so we're going to keep single family, all these residential uses basically stay the same as the current zone. So there's no change in any of those residential units. Everything stays identical to what it is today. Keep going. Extensive uses.
The conversion to 2-family dwellings changes?
No change to what it is today.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I guess I went through this and I looked at it as like B and B1 areas if we're trying to get kind of more similar to that, but I guess I'm misunderstanding. I misunderstood where you were going with that.
And that's a discussion we can have, Rebecca. Like what I did is I tried to say, okay, what's in IC today? What stays, what goes, what gets added? So this is a comparison to that. We can have the discussion about should we drive parity to B1? I mean, we can have those discussions, but that's not what I did. I just tried to focus on making this transitional change. So if you go down to, extensive uses, so exempted under farm under GL 40A, section 3, and then farm, ski and tow, no change. Riding school, I said yes, that is a change. You could riding school might be nice there as opposed to a warehouse. So that's first change in favor of an additional added use. Private golf course, didn't touch it. I know the likelihood of it happening, 9 holes, I doubt it, but anyway, it's ZBA, I didn't touch it. Public-private facility providing tennis, swimming, ZBA. I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong column. I made that a yes to be consistent with B and B1. So that's added use number 2. Commercial earth removal, I changed that to a no. That's not a site where I'd envision it would be a commercial earth removal operation. Conservation area, yes, no change. Heliports, no change. Public utility, no change. Small wireless facilities, planning board, no change. All these are, okay, we're the same on educational, religious use, philanthropic use. I did add a yes. So you could put philanthropic use there just like you can in every other zone, every other business zone other than IC. So that's an added use. Public safety, yes, to be consistent with everything else. Convalescent nursing, I did add. I said yes. That's an added use that just consistent with B and B1. I said we can go from ZBA to a yes. Same with assisted living. I said we can go from ZBA to yes. So you can see there's like 4 things that have been added. I'm sorry, we can pause.
Yeah, I just want to flag those because I think we need to think a little bit about the implications of making those. I know they're already allowed in the business, but if these parcels are substantially larger, and you actually get those facilities, I think we just need to be mindful of what those implications are. So I just like to flag those for further discussion.
Okay. Daycare center, that's a protected use. That's a yes, no change. Animal shelter, no change. Hospital, medical center, or hospital medical center, yeah, I made that a yes. And there should be a footnote there to be consistent with the others.
And I'd say similarly flag that for future discussion.
Sports or athletic facility, yes. Which is a change, which is an add. Club is an add. Professional or business office, no change.
Yeah, I'm going to flag the sports facility also because I think it's got that same kind of impact that we need to just discuss. Sorry.
Club. Yeah, so club is a yes. Professional, no change. ZBA, kennel, same, no change. Veterinary, made it a yes instead of ZBA. So that is an up zone. Research and development, no change. Laboratory or healthcare facility, no change. Laboratory, no change. Bank, no change. It's a yes. Hotel, motel, inn is a yes. So that's a change up. Conference center, no change, ZBA. Restaurant, ZBA, no change. Fast food, no change. There's a change on service shops and craft art studio. So those were ZBA, they now would be allowed under this proposal. Print shop, no change. Retail stores, more than 25,000 square feet, no change. Retail stores containing less than 25,000, that's a change. We would allow those versus no. Adult use, that's a change to a no. Automobile service station, no change. ZBA. Repair garage, no change. Self-storage facility is a change. That goes from yes to no. Car sales, no change. Repair shop is a yes from ZBA. Warehouse is a no from a yes to a no. Specialty food shop containing less than 3,000 square feet goes from no to yes. And then food shop containing more than 3,000 square feet goes from no to ZBA. Wholesale operations, no change. Light manufacturing, no change. Manufacturing goes to no. And again, that's everything manufacturing above light manufacturing. Building trade goes to a yes. I'm sorry, no change. Stays as a yes. Landscaping services stays as a yes. Landscaping contractors goes to a no from a yes. Registered marijuana dispensary goes to a no from ZBA. Rooftop solar stays the same. Small grade stays the same. Large scale stays the same. I think that's it. Yeah, is that a change? That red down there?
That's just a place note for the footnote we're waiting to be approved by the Attorney General.
Gotcha.
We've reached the end of the use table changes.
So Cindy, you flagged a couple. So that's the proposal in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no change to the dimensional requirements. So the dimensional requirements are what they are. There'd be no change right now. This is about, taking, controlling or putting in some protective measures against some of the biggest, most challenging uses, and then bringing in some other uses that people have said they'd like to see.
Thanks, Brett.
With the other, yep, you bet.
So bear with me. Are there any board comments on this while I?
So dimensional requirements you said are going to stay the same, but which zone? Because we've got different dimensional requirements for IC and for B. So which zone?
They'd stay as whatever they are today for IC. They would stay as IC. So I guess we'd put in the table, we would just keep them the same. So we would need to add a table, and then we would just say that for B2, they're exactly the same as the IC district.
So I would flag that as well, because there's building heights there that we may want to look at. Lot coverage. I'm not sure yet, but I would flag the dimensional requirements. I think that ought to be reviewed with some scrutiny also.
So I guess my quick thought on this, Rich, thanks for all the hard work on this. If we're making this a B district now, and I know that you're trying to make it like as minimal changes as possible for the IC, but it's not going to be an IC district anymore. So do we want, you have gone ahead and taken liberties to change certain things. Do we want to consider other things as well, I guess, that are more closely related to the B district?
Sure.
And I don't know what the answer is to that. I just went through and flagged everything in there that I thought was maybe, I don't know if it needs to be a little bit more restrictive or not. If we're trying to get it to a B district, really, that's your end game, is enabling it a business district, then does it need to be more closely related to the business district, I guess is where I'm going.
Or I guess whichever is more permissive of the B1 versus IC.
Of the B or B1 versus the IC.
Yeah, like for example, animal shelter, the more permissive is ZBA. I guess, yeah.
My question is, maybe, do we want to be more permissive or more restrictive on it? Because we're talking about changing it into a business district that might be neighboring houses, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, animal shelter in particular, I think you could make a no. Just looking at that one. No, we could potentially address that. We did get feedback when we went through this the first time. And I think to the extent that we want to be cognizant of the uses that are there today and avoid flipping those uses. And I know we might have done it with one use, landscape contractors. and there is no animal shelter there right now. So I don't think that if we were to say no, because we're trying to line it up with a business district, I don't think we'd run into any. I don't think there'd be anybody would quibble over that. So yes, Rebecca, to your question, we could look at things and say, do we want to change that a little more than what's proposed here?
Curious, because I think we're trying to come up with almost a merged kind of piece that kind of spans both sides of it. So it's either an IC2 district or it's a B2, right?
Yeah, and again, yes, I agree. I still can't get my head around coming off of 495 and then taking a left to enter Boxborough. And, I mean, you know some of the buildings we've approved in the industrial commercial district recently, and seeing that on Mass Ave, 50 feet from the road. Like, you can plant as many trees as you want. Like that, to me, that's not Mass Ave. That's not what the long-term master plan says. That's not. So I was focused there. But yes, as we think about this as a gateway business district, what are some of the other things we can change to get there? I agree. We can do that.
One other thing, I would probably give some thought to who is the appropriate reviewing agent for this. Is it the ZBA or is it the planning board for some of these things? I don't know the answer entirely, but our use regulations are all set up with planning board, some of them, and then in the business district it's largely planning board, and then in IC it's largely ZBA. So I don't know the answer to that one either, Rich, but I would maybe we should think about that a little bit. Who might be the most appropriate team to review those?
Yep. Good feedback.
So again, I guess I'm just trying to sort of contemplate I know what some of the goals are for this, and the idea of a gateway, that's a useful term and gives people kind of an idea. But if some of these parcels were to be consolidated, I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the type of use that could potentially bring in a lot of traffic, that maybe we do want, maybe we don't, but I think we need to understand that. I think impact to abutters, and especially residential, which I don't think we highlight on that. You have to look at the maps a little bit more intently. And I do think some of what you might want to control has to do with the dimensional requirements. So I do think we have to study that, because, if a bunch of these parcels got consolidated and the hospital went up there or a medical center went up there and lots of traffic came in and out of there, is that a desired result, for instance?
Yeah. And I'm like, just given the size of the parcels, I mean, if we want to go ZBA on some of those things, or I'm sorry, whatever, PB, a special permit on some of those things, that is certainly, I'm open to that. Like, because Cindy, like, why, yes, hospital somewhere else in the B district. Well, what parcel where? Is there really going to be something further down Mass Ave, on a 1 acre parcel, 2 acre parcel? Probably not, but there's more likelihood here. So yeah, we could tighten it up and say, okay, that's got to go through a ZBA so that you have more discretion over its approval. You can hear from some of the abutters. But yes,
yeah, I mean, I guess, right. I mean, that would be, again, a more incremental approach, because, until something is in front of us, we don't really know the implications, but that would allow you more opportunity to have some discretion, to your point. So perhaps the things that I sort of highlighted as flagged, maybe I would recommend the incremental approach of making those special permit, likely by the planning board, to Rebecca's point. Although I know in the industrial it wasn't, but I think this, the intent is to give this more visibility. So I think the planning board might be the more appropriate board. But so I guess of the ones that I highlighted, I would at least, so that's not to clog this up. If you wanted to make those by special permit from the planning board, maybe that would be a little bit more of an incremental approach, so that we're not getting hit with something that's more overwhelming than, the intent is. And again, I do want to look at the dimensional requirements, but I don't have a scheme to do that in this group setting, so I'm not sure how to.
No, take your time with that. I think you'll find the dimensional schedules are, I think it's more restrictive in the industrial commercial, believe it or not, because it contemplated larger buildings.
Right. And I don't know if that suits sort of what we're going for here, so.
Yeah,
again,
if we change some of these to ZBA, maybe the dimensional schedule, can change, right? So, or PB, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's a fair, we all should look at the dimensional schedule, and we need to do it anyway, because either if we're just going to mirror IC, we need at least to populate the table. So we're all going to have to stare at it.
Yeah.
So we can take that as an action to stare at.
I'm questioning the conference center too. I'm trying to get my head around it and imagining these things, and that could be a whopping place, couldn't it? Like, it could be a pretty substantial.
Yeah, I agree.
Area.
Again, not unwanted necessarily, but it could have lots of
Totally.
impact, and we want to be able to address that.
Conference center, yeah. You want you to highlight that, Alec. So it's ZBA right now. So it's a potential, Rebecca, you're saying we could make that a no in that zone.
Yeah, because I'm kind of weaving between the IC and the B districts. And I feel like, because this has to be like a middle road almost in my mind only.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just throwing this out because I tend to do that. So, but yeah, that's just one I'm thinking about. Mark, go ahead.
There we go. So I'm okay with this. I mean, what it's trying to do is liberalize what's currently an industrial district to encourage more of the things that we would like to see there and discourage the things that we don't. I mean, that's the intent. To make it easier to pass, at least round one, by simply changing what's allowed in the district, as Rich has done, but maintaining the dimensional schedules. I mean, yes, I agree. We really do need to go look at them again, because if we're going to move them over into that column, then fine, but pretty much leave them as they are, because almost all of them are more restrictive as pertains to industrial commercial than they are in any of the other business zones. And we probably would circle back later and start to kind of fine tune those. But I think what Rich is trying to do is get something in place now as a protective measure to keep the worst of the worst out, and then bit by bit we can liberalize it by changing some of the dimensional schedule items. And I'm looking at the dimensional schedule on another screen, and there's some pretty big differences in these two areas. So if anybody's worried about what could happen in the B2 zone if we were to approve this, I think I'm not so much worried about what could happen as with the changes that wasn't able to happen before. In fact, there's very little really being proposed, but a lot of the things that could have happened can't. So I'm kind of good with where this is going, and I understand that we're probably going to have to go look at the dimensional schedules at some point. But so far, I mean, most of these look okay to me. And then you have to go back and look at the properties, because again, there's not a lot of properties that we're talking about here. They're very specific. Most of the things that seem to be the most intensive uses, like hospital, medical center, sports or athletic facility, a conference center, or hotel, motel inn, there's really, unless one of these businesses moves out, I don't see any of these other types of businesses coming in. And but on the other hand, what we're saying here is, well, if one of these industrial commercial businesses was to move out and something less industrial or commercial would want to move in, well, then I think I'm okay with that. So I don't think this is so risky because it's not very far ranging. I think it's a good move in the right direction so far.
Thanks, Mark. Any other board comments?
Yeah, I guess I did want to ask about the design review component of this.
That's a separate article. That's another one that's
okay.
If you want to rifle through mine, and then we can. Do you want to get through everything, and then we can decide
No, that's
which
okay,
ones we want to go
but
to hearing on?
I had a similar comment to Cindy because it feels like the way the DRB one is written, it's kind of contingent on this passing. So when we get there, Rich, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Did you get the feedback you needed today on that?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Do we want to decide, because I know we have to get to public hearing, there's a little bit of work to do. Alec can walk us through the schedule, I guess. Maybe we'll get through all of them and then we can decide where we go from here. Is that, Rebecca, what you want to do?
Yeah, I think some of them are definitely bigger. Some of them are, I think, yeah, let's just go through schedule at the end and we'll see what we can really do.
Okay, design guides was the next one.
Before you leave that one, Rich, I guess the reason I'm harping on the dimensional schedule is that I think for this vision of a gateway, I do think, height of building is going to be something we're going to be interested in, right? The amount of frontage, right now the IC's got a very big frontage and that might not be part of the vision. So that's why I do think the dimensional requirements need to be addressed. So I just reiterating that point. So thanks.
Hey, do you want to pull up the DRB one, Alec? Rich, this seems pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. So it leaves the design review guidelines to the design review board. This just basically expands the applicability of what we have today to the business or B1 business one districts. And then there's some nuance in the way that pre-existing single family dwellings are dealt with in 442A, which is specific to town center. So I just deleted that reference and it's just really except for pre-existing single family dwellings. And then the same with the signs. It does not presume a change to B2. So we'd have to talk about how, would we have, would we do a floor modification? Would we include B2 and then do a floor modification if B2 doesn't pass or we don't go forward? My intent would be that whatever comes of B2, this would include it. So maybe it needs to say business one. I didn't do it because it doesn't exist today, right? But my intent would be that it would apply to business two as well, assuming we approve that.
Sorry, I misread that the first time.
No, it wasn't clear.
That makes sense.
It wasn't clear.
It is going to be a little complicated or hopefully not too confusing if the B2 goes forward then. But yeah, I think we'll probably have to do some kind of a modification or have a plan B, right?
As I think about it, and I'll take your and Alex's input, it probably makes sense to add B2 here, assuming we're going forward with public hearings and we're going to bring two articles forward, assuming that you're going forward with an article B for B2 and this, I would put B2 in it. And I'd have B2 addressed first. If it fails, then we amend it before we amend it after it's read to strike B2.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Have that amendment already drafted. So the presumption is, since Article 1 passed, we leave the language in here. Or, seeing as Article 2 failed, we're going to, this amendment that we already have pre-drafted for Article 3 is, pulling that district out.
Right.
Because you don't want to have all but the new district described, because then that creates a weird gray area.
Any other comments, board members?
So I was always confused a little bit about this because we do have design review guidelines that talk about the business district, right? And Rebecca, maybe you can help.
It's so the DRB gets pulled in for certain applications, a signage, maybe a signage in town center or whatever. And so there are some, but one of the master plan goals is supposed to be looking at bigger developments. So it's something that we haven't done because we didn't have overall permission to do that. But so I think that this will help strengthen that. And then in tandem, we're trying to, update the guidelines to kind of capture more of these larger buildings, larger scaled buildings. So we have very limited purview over stuff. It's when a certain application comes. One was like, I think it's I want to say, I know that Sarah's Way triggered it for one something or other. I can't remember.
Housing in the B1 district calls for B2, calls for DRB review. Housing.
And then we can get pulled in by the PB as requested.
So I guess my question is to the design review board: is there anywhere else, in the main corridor or near other parts of town that, you envision? And I'm just asking this as your board envision any other areas where you would like to have advisory input. I mean, we do have an R1 district that's tiny. There's another section of Mass, something that, well, I'll just leave it at that. Are there any other areas in town that the DRB is considering?
I can't speak for the whole board right now, but speaking for myself, I mean, when we considered stuff that was happening over on Codman, I think that would have been a really beneficial thing to have some guidelines in place to review some of those buildings. So yeah, there's a lot going on over there. So yes, I think we could think broadly about this, but I don't want to bite off too much when I've heard very clearly from the town that the B district is what they're really interested in so far. So if we could get that passed, frankly, I feel like that would be a really good place to start. And if we saw fit to expand that at some point, then maybe we expand it at some point. That's my own personal thought about that right now.
Okay, thank you. I would be supportive of adding the verbiage for the B2 in here and then pulling it if it doesn't pass. I think that's a better approach so people see it at least.
Yeah. Feels clean. Okay. Any other comments on that one? Terrific. 2 down. What's next, Rich?
2 down. So Village Center overlay, is that the next one, Alec?
Can do. Bear with me. This one's just
and just for everybody's, while you have that up there, Alec, you see Mass Ave zoning changes to IC district. So Mass Ave zoning changes to IC district. We really talked, and then design guides. So Mass Ave zoning, the thought was that was really looking at the broader use table and addressing other uses on Mass Ave. So we didn't really talk about that. We talked about the IC change. We could look at that table that we were staring at with the IC changes, and we can look at the other business use changes and say, do we want to adjust any of those? I did not spend any calories during this last period from the last meeting to this meeting thinking about doing much with that. I've thought about a couple things, but I really didn't make that proposal. So that's still out there. That's line 3. We can still look at that if we want to, like next meeting, or we can do it this meeting. It's up. But that was really just like we could look at that table because I didn't bring anything separate for that. Mm-hmm. So if people have specific things they'd like to talk about for the rest of the B district or B1, then we can have that discussion. But I didn't have any specific proposal.
Okay, so which one shall we tackle next?
Let's hit Village Center overlay. And this bylaw, for what it's worth, this is the core, Rebecca, right? This is kind of like where you want to be. You want to start here and go out. This, honestly, I think is something that there's a lot here for us to get our heads around. Harvard, and in the packet, and I haven't read it, but Harvard is doing a village overlay. Other communities have done a village overlay. I think we need to really roll up our sleeves and dig in on this. And I honestly think this is probably more of a fall town meeting type article, but not to just punt everything, to begin the process of digging in and working through it, because I think it'll take that long. Okay, Alec, you kind of laid this out. I mean, I don't know if I can certainly talk to it, but Alec was very instrumental in helping with this. But the idea is, and I didn't draw a map yet, but the idea is that this doesn't change the underlying uses in the districts at hand. This would overlay on top of the current town center district, potentially some ag res district, definitely B district. So it would not change the underlying uses, but it would provide the owners an option and an alternative to development that's aligned to a village core. And we will draw the map, but notionally, my thinking is it starts somewhere right around the Middlesex Bank Plaza, maybe slightly to the east of that. We would go parcel by parcel, but so say, one or two buildings over from Middlesex Bank, up through Middlesex Bank, all the way up to the center of Middle Road, across Middle Road, and then cut across the street. So the parcels to the west of the two historic homes, the historic home parcel, and then all the way back down Mass Ave back to, on the south side, Middlesex Bank, and then down Stowe Road to the yellow house, potentially the 72 Stowe Road too. We can talk about going north on Middle, but that's kind of, and oh, by the way, this is all with the study that was done with Ty and Bond. You can look there and you can kind of see the mapping. So that's really we want to pull that core together, and that would be this overlay. So it just lays on top. It sets out a set of uses that are specific to that overlay. And it has a separate dimensional schedule that's specific to those uses in this overlay district. And somebody would come forward with a site plan approval or a special permit application invoking the overlay. That's kind of how it's envisioned. The uses, any questions? I'm sorry, I thought I heard something.
No, continue.
Okay, so the uses, and I didn't want to get into self-determining, like, is it a yes or is it and it says ZBA, it could be planning board. I didn't want to self-determine yes or special permit. I just wanted to get the use table built. So these uses, philanthropic, daycare, club, professional or business office, bank, restaurant, service shops, craft shop, retail stores, specialty food shop. Is that it, Alec? Does it go on to the next page? I think it does. I thought there was a mixed use.
Mixed use with residential.
Yep, mixed use with residential located above. So these are the uses. And again, I went through the use table and culled out the uses that would be specific to the village center overlay, that would get the benefits of the dimensional regulations that go with it. So this is a first crack. And then you go down to the dimensional use table, and we pulled in some of what was in the tie and bond study. So you can see, front yard setback is, what is it today, Alec? Well, it depends on the zone, but I think it's 50 feet.
That's correct. The two that carry over, so maximum stories and building height, both carry over universally to all the districts within that scope.
Okay. And then, so you just carried them over. And then there's 10 to 20 feet of front yard setback and I think the tie and bond, I think that was right out of their report, 10 to 20 feet. And then we didn't touch any other. So there's a lot of different thoughts out there in terms of, lot coverage versus floor area ratio. What's a better way to measure it? I think we've got some homework to do there, but the idea to, just be very clear is this is you can see vehicle parking shall be located to the rear of any structures, prohibited between structures and on Mass Ave. This is a village. So if you opt for the village center overlay, you're getting the ability to bring buildings up to the street, 10, 20 feet off the street right away. You're getting the ability, you're bringing parking into the rear. We're promoting, we'd want to be promoting sidewalks. So you can start to see it'll to opt to do this, it'll change the way that the construction happens, or the way that the buildings and the properties are laid out. Next step, I think, will be to start drawing up a parcel map. But anyway, I just wanted to get this on the table. I don't think we're racing to annual town meeting on this. I think this is a fall town meeting. This is going to require plenty of public input. I do want to see what Harvard did, not the university, the town, in what they're putting forward. And there's probably some other examples to pull in. And then, anyway, I'll stop talking.
Board comments?
I mean, I guess I need to reread the tie and bond study and understand sort of the genesis of that. And also, if somebody chooses not to use the overlay, right, the underlying zoning still stands, does that potentially mean you get some of what you want, not all of what you want, and then you get some kind of weird mishmash? So I don't know, that's maybe down the road, but it's, this is kind of a long-term planning exercise, but if part of it were to go into effect, could that have a more, I don't know, I don't want to say more negative result, but I think we need to think about that, right? Just thinking out loud here. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's good feedback, Cindy. And I've done a little bit of research on this. I mean, that's another, changing the underlying zoning is another way to do it. That's what we did for town center. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we'd argue that got us where we wanted to get to. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a perfect solution. The general consensus is if you change the underlying zoning, it can be harder for landowners to get their head around that. And we need cooperation of landowners. I mean, that's how you get this done. So, but it's good feedback. It's good input.
Chris?
So I guess, so if there is a conflict, like the underlying zoning says X, this overlay says Y, what's the resolution? Is it, if it's allowed in one, it is thus allowed?
If it's allowed, if it's underlying, so let's say a trade shop, is ZBA, it's approved, it's authorized by special permit approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. If a property owner says, well, I want to do a trade shop in this district, this overlay district, then they're choosing not to work within the overlay district. They're choosing to work within the baseline B1 district. So all of the normal dimensional ZBA approval, everything that's in the bylaw today, presumably with a future design review board, would be at play. if they said, well, I don't want to do a trade shop, I want to do a specialty food shop or retail, small retail, then they can get the benefit under this, which is going to allow them to, gussy up right up to the street, 10, 20 feet off the street. Now that at the end of the day, that might not be good for them. It might be harder. I mean, there are questions here, right? This isn't a slam dunk. It could be harder, but I don't know, Chris, if I've answered the question.
So I was just curious. So if there was a specialty food shop here that has, it's right up next to the street, and then that changes ownership, or the current owner wants to convert that to a trade shop, do they now need to knock the building down and set it back X number of feet, or do they get the benefits of both? They
wouldn't be able to. So if the building was built, Alec, you can keep me honest here, but let's say that somebody came in and put a new building up and they wanted to put in a general store, and presumably we can add general store if it's not here, and it's 20 feet from the street, and or 15 feet from the street, and that's what was allowed. The general store goes bankrupt. Somebody buys the building and says, I want to put a trade shop in. I believe we would say that use is not allowed, because the trade shop is only allowed under the underlying zoning, and it requires a 50-foot setback. So it would be an unallowed use.
So the physical structure. But if the physical structure did fit both cases, then you could use both. Okay, I was just curious how, if it was you always get to pick the most permissive rule and pick a la carte, or if you have to kind of set yourself with one or the other. I'm just curious how it worked. Yeah, because I'd like to see how, I guess, Harvard does it, or how some other communities around have done similar things. It'd be nice to kind of compare notes, just to see what, reuse good ideas or avoid problematic ones.
And Harvard is actually bringing theirs forward this town meeting. So this is live for them. They're literally they're probably 8 months ahead of us. Maybe longer. I don't know.
That's good. So we can watch, and
we can watch.
If it's terrible, we know not to do that.
I think, I guess for me, I'm struggling with the front yard setback. When I think about, what really makes Harvard awesome, it's their big, beautiful village green that they have, right? And then, you have that huge green space, and then the buildings, yes, they're 20 feet, 30 feet off the road. And the other thing I'm thinking about, and I understand why that would be, a preferential kind of way to, invite people, get people walking around a community setting, to give them like a storefront vibe. And Acton has done it very successfully. But I think about our mix of very old buildings that are there, and how would I feel about, the impacts to, say, that the historic building in the pond area, you know what I mean? Or impacts on, like, if somebody raised, God forbid, that the church and took that beautiful building down, and they could slap something up against the road. Does that give me what I love about charming Boxborough more? I don't think so. I think that would really break my heart. So there's certain buildings along there that set how they're set intentionally as they were designed and built. I worry a little bit about what the impacts would be to buildings like that along there. I'm also thinking about, West Acton. Part of why they don't have the big front yards is also because they've got a roadway, a double lane roadway, and then they've got an allowance for parking on both sides of the road, and then a sidewalk on both sides of the road. So I think the impervious, like the vehicular, I guess, and the pedestrian eats into the front yards of that. It's not necessarily bringing the buildings closer, but you have a wider roadway and pedestrian way on both sides, if that makes sense. So I think there's a couple ways to think about that. I just need to get my head around it a little bit more. But it would be interesting to see your map that you're going to propose. Our bylaws require setbacks of, 40, 50, 75 feet, on various areas and where you're listing. So it's very impactful, right? Cindy.
Yeah, were you done, Rebecca? Because
Yeah, no, I was done. That was my biggest question mark that I
yeah. Well, you prompted me to think about something that I have been thinking about for quite a while, and that is, what it would take to take this section of Route 111 out of state highway, which is something I believe Acton was able to do or was always that way and avoided it. I have looked into some of this, but Rich and Rebecca, you guys have been working on Village Center stuff for quite a while. Maybe you've already looked into that, but whether it's an act of the legislature or something, there may be value in pursuing that as sort of an initiator of this effort, because I know the pedestrian piece is really important, but until that traffic gets managed in that area, I just don't know that we're going to ever get the feel that we want. So, all of this sounds good, but I'm also looking for first steps, and this almost seems like, maybe there's some infrastructure first steps that need to happen. The other aspect, Rebecca's talking about preserving the historic buildings, and maybe this is something she's going to talk about later, but, is there some historic preservation effort that ought to be done in this area first, which will preserve those buildings, and then, perhaps the overlay can account for that. So just some foundational things that I think might have to happen before we bring something like this forward. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I think the roadway thing is worth looking into. I know what the question's been asked, but if we really, have the town really try to make it happen, and I think it would be a worthwhile effort to investigate further.
Yeah, the town of Groton, and you can see it when you drive through it. There's a specific sign that says State Highway ends, State Highway begins, and it's probably, I don't know, quarter of a mile. I mean, it's maybe longer. It's almost from like Lawrence Academy to past the center, like well past the center.
Yeah, and West Acton also. And I did look into this at one point, and there is a mechanism to do it. So I would, again, I don't want to hold up other efforts, but I think that's one of those foundational things that I think we ought to be exploring.
Is that simply an outreach to DOT, Alec?
To actually get control requires a couple different steps, but Mass DOT is the first point of contact because you need to understand their willingness to participate. I do caution that oftentimes these things are done in tandem, not necessarily one before the other, because simultaneously Mass DOT would like to see that there's an end use associated with such an action for them to be willing to disrupt a current right-of-way. Alternatively, too, oftentimes the voters in a population, so Boxborough in this case, want to be able to see an immediacy of action to follow, because the DPW at the time of transfer does take on sole responsibility for all maintenance and care of said right of way.
Do you have the reference to Mass General Law or anything that you can send around to us, Alec?
I'll do some research. I'll pull some relevant sections. My experience comes from a town that did previously consider and ultimately was responsible for a stretch of state highway.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, and it's definitely an action. It's been talked about, Cindy. And, is it to the exclusion of everything else? I don't know, but it certainly, the idea of getting a widened road or a roadway with, parking along the street, like, yes. And, Rebecca, to your point, you have existing uses. Like this stuff you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden things start looking different, right? Yeah, we'd want to make sure that historic buildings are preserved, right? We don't want to, my intent is not to do this so that all of a sudden historic buildings start coming down. That's not, the intent is that those coexist. Like if in the time bond study, we fully integrated all that with the plan, right? So this is step one in how to start to begin to bring that vision to life. So I'll leave it at that. And it's not a race to town meeting. This is, fall is kind of what my thought is.
Yeah, I think it will take a fair amount of thinking through. I think there's a lot of validity in it, honestly. And this kind of does overlap with the whole feelings about trying to set up a historic district, because I feel like we need to protect certain things like that. They did do it beautifully in both Harvard and in Acton. Acton, they actually picked up, and I think they used a building, reused a building. So,
Yep.
You know, it can be done well, but we need to put the measures in place to make sure it is done well, right?
Agree. I agree with that.
Terrific. Any other board comments on this one? A lot to think about, Rich. Okay, what's next then?
ADU. You want to pull that up, Alec? This one's pretty straightforward. So this just changes the ADU to be the lesser of half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 1,000 square feet. So it jumps it up to 1,000 from 900. I think when we did this, there, maybe not all of us, but there was concern because we came down, I think, from 1,200 was our original bylaw to map into the state law of 900. The concern is that that's relative, that's a small unit, and that may be too restrictive. And then we have since town meeting learned that the Attorney General has approved higher than 900. In fact, I think it was 1,000. Alec, you have the specific site. I don't know if it was South Hadley, but there was a town that approved a higher square footage above what's specified in MGL, and the Attorney General approved it. So I kept to the 1,000 square feet, which is what they did, and they got Attorney General approval. Frankly, we could go, you know, if I had my druthers, I'd say it's 1,200, but I just stuck with what we know the Attorney General has approved. And it does give a little more flexibility. So that's the change here.
Thanks, Rich. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, I think we had 12 before. I talked with Alec about this too, and he feels, you know, comfortable with 1,000. I just don't know whether we should ask, you know, go back for the 12 that we had before, but then risk the Attorney General saying no. Then we're back to the beginning, rather than go with 1,000, see if it's a easy lift, and then wait for another town to try and do what we did to 1,100. So I guess I'm okay with the 1,000 would have solved at least one person's problem. And but again, we already said 1,200, and the town voted for it. So I don't see why the town would say no to it. I guess the only question is whether the AG would say no to it. So I'm okay with doing it, given the lack of guidance from the state at this point. So I'm okay with this one. I think it's an easy ask of the town.
So what's the sensitivity? And when I say sensitivity, I mean this like almost like a sensitivity analysis, Alec. Like, you know, somebody did 1,000, so 1,000 is the new number. If somebody did 1,100, like at what point does the Attorney General say no mas, right? And do they care? I don't know.
Madam Chairperson, do you mind if I kind of speculate on this one? So I have thus far told the board, you know, be aware there's probably an upper limit to this. I don't want that to preclude you from going for that upper limit. I think this is a decision truly left to the discretion of this board. And I don't want to discourage you from going for whatever number you think is appropriate, whether that be by right, whether that be by special permit as potentially a higher threshold, whatever you may choose. I think once you start going over that 1,000 square foot threshold, I think that's when Attorney Costa and myself, but certainly myself, but maybe even Attorney Costa, step in and we start having a more direct conversation with the Attorney General during the review. Don't just do a cover letter, but reach out in advance and have a speculative conversation that we are proposing this. even as you're considering developing this bylaw, there is certainly the ability for me to reach out and ask them even the question of, what's the highest that you've approved thus far? I can have a more direct conversation with them as you're developing a bylaw, as you approve a bylaw and you're filing it for submission. I think there can be a lot of collaborative effort here, and I don't want the board to feel in any way like I'm squelching your ability to explore that. So please do freely explore whatever thresholds related to this bylaw you think are appropriate, so long as you're not going under 900. It's not an explicit no. And just let me know what additional information you need to make an informed decision out, and I'll go out and get it for you.
Alec, was there an economic basis for the 900 that the state provided? At one time we looked through all the initial ADU information, but do you ever recall that there was a basis for the 900?
Yeah, so neither a state building official, a local building official, or a state official, none of them have said this to me explicitly. But the rumors I have heard from within my networks and other networks is that it is very much wedded to the 1,000-foot addition threshold set for stretch code. So if you do an addition of greater than 1,000 square feet, it can trigger a partial, if not complete renovation, bringing that up to stretch code. And so there was an impedance to keep this within a reasonable threshold under that. A potential counter to that argument, though, is that that's a decision left to the property owner. If the property owner feels the juice is worth the squeeze to go up to, say, 1,050 square feet, and they're willing to make those changes to bring at least that section of the home up to the stretch energy code, then that's their discretion to do so. But my understanding is that at least a portion of the decision was tied to other thresholds triggered by other laws that this would potentially intersect with.
Actually, I'm just reading our bylaw. It was no more than 1,300 square feet of gross floor area, but not exceed 40% of the gross floor area of the existing single-family dwelling. So that's kind of where we left it. That was approved.
And that's by right, Mark?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we did have that discussion about a percentage of gross floor area, because we talked about what if they flip it, right, and your primary becomes your secondary. And I we had a fair amount of discussion on that, so we may want to be. Well,
we also had the next line was any addition shall not create more than 15% increase in the gross floor area of the existing structure. So we had kind of ropes around it, but again, I mean, the problem with the ADU has always been the septic requirements. I mean, there's not going to be a flood of big ADUs anytime soon until that septic requirement gets addressed. And but if you're going to have a single bedroom, you're still going to have to meet the septic requirement, whether it's 900 square feet or 1,300. So, I'd go to 12. I mean, but I just don't want to risk it failing. I mean, I hate to give up ground that we worked hard to get. I mean, we worked hard to get the 1,300 square foot pass, and it passed. And now the state's come and said, well, 900. It's like, well, we had figured something else for our town. So I'd like to head back in that direction if we could.
What does failure look like? The Attorney General would rule down the change, so we'd still be at where we're at today, right?
Right.
That's correct. If the attorney...
1,000.
Sorry, go ahead.
But you wouldn't have the 1,000.
You wouldn't have the 1,000, right? Failure looks like back to square one.
Right. Back to the 900.
Right. So I'm okay with going 1,000 if it sounds safe, and then see if anybody else pops up. I mean, I do understand.
Every year we can propose another 1,000 until they send us home.
They just do the 1,000 because we know it's going to get approved, and this thing is so fresh for everyone that there's going to be movement that happens. And if somebody accepts 12, then we can always amend. But We looked a little silly having to go back and say, sorry, we couldn't we couldn't do what we thought we could do, or we got rejected from it with the.
No, we didn't look silly. No, 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 no.
Well,
We
I mean,
looked
if we
silly.
go in and propose something that we know might not pass, we will look we could potentially look a little silly for proposing something.
No, I mean, I don't mind to stick my neck out a little bit, but I'm okay with going the safe route. But because again, I don't think there's going to be a flood of these. But wouldn't you know that the first person to come in was hemmed by the 900 square foot limit? So, the law of unintended consequences is.
Is the limit, is it square feet or is it livable square feet? I understand that's another constraint. Depending on
gross floor area.
Gross floor area, and that's the state requirement. So we couldn't mess with that.
No, but we can increase it. I'm okay.
My proposal
Let's go
stands.
with
My
1,000,
proposal stands.
and we'll get it done. At least we'll make a move in the right direction. I'd much rather proceed slowly in that direction. At least we're moving in the right way.
All right.
Incremental progress is still progress.
Any other discussion? Okay. What is next?
Well, actually, just I have one thing. If we bring it to a hearing, then people can come in and say, how come you don't make it 1,100 or 1,200? I mean, I guess what we need to do is kind of say, this is where we're headed with it, and this is why. But if people feel strongly differently that we should stick our necks out a little bit further, I'm game for that. So I think the public needs to weigh in. I think that's the whole intent of having a public hearing next. So.
My last one was did I have another one?
Revisions to municipal use,
Yeah.
which was admittedly proposed by multiple individuals, but you said it first, so.
I think the place to go there is the last working file we had, which you did bring up packet.
It wasn't in the packet.
This was one of the updates that came earlier today. The table that the board had worked on back in July, as a talking point if you wanted to revive a discussion on any of these individually.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably go ahead and look at it.
Yeah, so this is what we had last July. We abandoned, so we had identified all these different municipal uses and we were building out the municipal use table. We abandoned the effort and focused exclusively on the line 7, public safety, because we didn't want other things to distract. But as we sit here today, we haven't addressed the other uses. So the idea is we go back at it and fill the rest of the table in. And I thought everything that's green, I thought we reached agreement on. There are some question marks that we never really got to. But yeah, that's what the proposal is, to go back and fill the rest of the table in.
Or we can take public works off the table, right?
You can take public safety off.
I'm sorry, public safety.
Yeah, that one's in. We got that one in. So that's a done. Whatever color done is, purple, blue.
I think with regard to utility, we need some legal advice about municipal water, municipal sewer. I think that may be a allowed. What am I trying to say? Not allowed by right, but any entity putting that in may have right of way ability. I can't recall the term. But anyway, so that's something I would suggest one might want to speak to council, and that not only leaves a few minor changes, but
Which ones were those, Cindy? Municipal water, municipal
municipal
sewer?
water, municipal sewer. I mean, we have a definition of public utility, which is only those utilities regulated by the DPU. Maybe we want to address these through that definition. I'm not certain that we should be spending a lot of time on this at this time. I feel like we've got a lot of other things to work on, but so I would back burner some of this, but my general comment is the water sewer utility piece, I think, is probably preempted by some other authority, but that should be run through legal channels to find out. And then you're really just left with a few other options, some of which might even be addressed to the village center overlay. But yeah, I don't know that I want to spend too much time on this particular one at this point.
Well, I mean, we left the kind of it as an open page. I mean, we were under the understanding for many years that all these things were allowed throughout town in all zones. And so now come to find out, well, oh, gee, maybe they're not. So I'd like to get it squared away. I mean, if you're right, Cindy, if the municipal water and sewer are givens, then the rest of it's pretty easy. I mean, I'd say, public works should be okay in B and B1, office park, maybe town center, probably not. Public safety, we're already taking care of. Community services, B, B1, office park. Industrial commercial, why not? Museum, yes, and where we already agreed on it should be. Question is, actually probably would allow a museum in a town center if under the right circumstances, so maybe by special permit. And then we'd be done with this. So really, if municipal water and sewer are the only hangs, then, or the only, well, yeah, the only hangs, then we could almost make fast work of the rest of it. And then we could put this one to bed and fix the whole thing, which is broken.
Public works, we don't have a definition for that either.
Well,
We'll need to have a definition then.
I mean, I'd say maybe just push this one until fall town meeting. That's how I'm looking at this whole list: is what's now, what's later. What's later can kind of follow. I'd say just push this one to the back of the bus, but I'd love to come back and get it done this year. And Alec, if you could find out if there's any legal precedent for public municipal water and sewer, kind of come back to us with that at some point, then that would help us narrow the field.
I don't know who came up with the public works as a line item, and did they have a definition for that? Do you recall?
I think we all did. I think we were pulling it from everybody else's zoning bylaws. Because when you look at it this way, it's like, well, where does, there are public works buildings in town, and unless you broke them up even further, but that is the list of municipal uses. You wouldn't want to leave them out.
Do we want to try to tackle the question marks other than public works at this time and water and sewer? it looks like a light lift, if well, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're town hall offices in AR or R1.
So
I
town
see.
hall today is in AR. So you could, I mean, it exists today. Now, I understand that you wouldn't necessarily want to build an office building in AR if you needed town offices. But town hall exists in AR. It could be a pre-existing non-conforming. I believe Harvard specifically calls out town hall as a use.
So say special permit then.
Yeah.
And to Cindy's point, I mean, this could be, this is cart before the horse if we're doing like a downtown village thing a little bit. Well, I don't know if it is. I don't know which one's chicken before the egg, but we're talking about, you know, doing an overlay in town center. Is that impactful to this at all? I guess I'd question that.
So
Not if it's an overlay.
yeah, this is for municipal use in where it would be. So current town hall is being used.
I understand.
I mean, if we need to build a town hall somewhere, where are we okay with it being built and constructed?
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. I'm just curious if this is, you know, would be impacted by, we've got a couple different big zoning changes potentially on the plate. So
Yeah, I mean, professional and business office currently is not allowed in AR or R1. So to me, those are professional and business offices. So town hall, it might be a pre-existing non-conforming, but to be consistent, because you might end up renting some of your municipal space to non-municipal entities at some place. So I would probably just be consistent with our current definition for professional and business office. If we had to fill this out today, and put a no in there for both of those.
yeah, I might agree with that as well.
And if it becomes a use under an overlay district, then that could be a superseding.
Yeah, it would. Okay.
So no for AR and R1. And I mean, we could also change the underlying zoning of town hall. The fact that it's on residential, you could almost change that to town center, and you're done. Because the property in front of it and the property across the street are both town center.
Yeah.
So museums, we agreed on most things, or I don't know if we finalized it or disagreed necessarily, but we had question marks on AR, R1, and TC.
I think part of it was, can we not restrict, like if you had something that you turned into a museum, like was an ancient house and you turn it into a museum, can you prevent that? I don't think so, because it's an educational purpose.
What zone is the little schoolhouse in? Is that residential?
AR.
Yeah.
All of them are.
Yeah, schoolhouse number 2 is AR.
And the museum is in AR. The museum.
Yeah, the museum. Yeah, so it'd be situations like that. You know, it's in house that a family donates to the town to become a museum of some kind. So I could see something that is legitimately residential, you know, suddenly becoming a museum because it's, you know, it's gifted to us.
So say special permit, special permit, special permit. The 3 question marks. I mean, it has to be a benefit, and there has to be a community benefit.
Okay.
With a special permit. That's the fundamental.
But Chris's point about a museum being an education institution, and now you're going back to the concern that we have in our current definitions under educational, governmental, or religious use. And maybe that's a place to identify a museum as an educational institution and rework that definition. And maybe it doesn't need to be an identified use here if we incorporate it, and if we define it appropriately.
I'm looking at the footnote. We have all uses above must be owned and operated by the municipality. That's flagged for this museum.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's
the
not
difference.
like the De Cordova or something like that,
Right.
which I love, but
Right. Well, so De Cordova would come in under the educational.
right. But this is saying a municipally owned.
Municipally owned museum, I think, would be special permit in AR, R1 in town center.
So it's interesting because the schoolhouses are museums,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they're not
Privately
municipally owned, right?
Ah. Interesting.
Maybe we nailed it for all of those things because we were concerned at the time. Like at one point, there was a pop culture museum that was going to come to town. It was a business, and they were going to take a very large facility to do their pop culture, and they were going to have shows and everything. Like we wouldn't see that in the agricultural residential district, right?
Oh, you couldn't stop it if it was an educational use.
Yeah, that's
It was it was theatrical. I'm not making like I'm just it was a for-profit enterprise.
Well, the word for profit doesn't enter into the educational and religious uses, does it?
No,
An educational use can be for profit.
Yep.
Therefore, you can't stop it no matter what.
maybe there's a size aspect. Because I think they were looking for like 80,000 square feet, or 40,000 square feet. Like to me, like the museum that we have is about as large as it would get in a residential district, right? What is that? 9, 10,000, 12,000 square feet, maybe. Maybe there's a size aspect.
Does it have the potential to grow, though? They added another part of the building to it, Rich. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Could we go down the special permit path, and then could we footnote that, because we don't want to be out of compliance with, if we're saying that there could be some Dover Amendment implications to museums as educational, we could, say except as allowed pursuant to Mass General Law, blah, 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 blah.
So I just want to point out our definition of philanthropic use includes museum.
Mm.
And we currently don't allow philanthropic in the AR and R1. So the definition of philanthropic, which is a charitable or nonprofit library, museum, or art gallery. So are we trying to define a town-owned museum, or are we trying to provide a definition for an educational institution or a philanthropic building?
I think I was kind of going down the path of town owned, but then when we talk more about it and you bring the schoolhouses into it, and then you take the example Chris gave that somebody wants to donate their historic home to the town. Well, I'm sorry, that they want to put their historic home in a trust, and it's going to become, the Mark White Memorial Museum. Somehow we want to accommodate that.
Well, the town has an interest in it, so I guess then would that be owned and would that be operated by the municipality?
Not necessarily, right? You could have a trust, a fully funded trust that is going to run this museum.
So then another word other than owned or operated, but sanctioned or
Accepted or approved.
what? Yeah, I mean, so there's got to be a word that we can put in there that contemplates owned, operated, or otherwise gifted or accepted by the community, I guess. I don't
I think
know.
sanctioned works. Sanctioned by the municipality.
Yeah, it's kind of loosey-goosey.
So I guess I'm still trying to figure out what problem are we trying to solve? The town has a museum currently, right?
What if somebody has a historic house that they want to give the town?
Then that sounds like that falls under philanthropic. And our current definition, philanthropic is not allowed in the AR and R1.
Philanthropic. Yeah, but it's a museum.
Well, I just that it's either under our philanthropic definition or it's under education under 40A section 3. And I think it's ultimately I think it's on the onus would be on the entity trying to cite one of these to demonstrate that it falls under section A, 40A section 3, and not for us to parse it out. I don't know. I'm just, again, thinking out loud here. I'm not suggesting policy.
Philanthropic use shall mean a charitable or non-profit library, museum, or art gallery.
Fairly limited.
And the word nonprofit actually describes library, doesn't necessarily describe museum or art gallery, based on the way this is written.
I mean, look at what if somebody came in and bought some land, there was some open land, and wanted to put a music hall in. That is, I mean, I don't know where the category that even falls under, but like that could be a like maybe that's not a museum, but it could be for educational purposes. Like I think of Groton Hill. Like I'm not suggesting that there's going to be a repeat of Groton Hill in Boxborough. Please don't misunderstand me. But somebody went and did something pretty wild and amazing on a parcel of land that I can't believe is Office Park. I don't know. I don't know what the zoning is.
The farm, yeah.
The farm. But like, what would prevent, like, what would we want to stand in the way of somebody trying to put a music? I mean, yes, there's implications, right? How close is it to the neighbors? What time are these concerts? How about the parking? Like all those things come into play. But, you know, it's clearly sitting in the middle of farmland somewhere. And I'm just trying to think through, you've got schoolhouses right now. You have one that is a known museum, and it's operated by a private family. You have a town museum. If we just stop there, there's two properties that are existing, two museums that are existing in the AR district. We could just say they're not pre-existing non-conforming and move on. Or we could say that, well, they're protected by the Dover Amendment because they're for educational purposes and they're allowed by right. And we could just put no's there or special permit. Like, I'd hate to say it's no. Like if philanthropic is a no in the AR and it's really a museum or a, what were the other things, Cindy? Sorry. Library, museum, or what was the third thing? Art studio. I'd hate to say that, no, you can't have those in the AR district. That feels like not goodness.
Well, again, I like the special permit aspect. Gives you some wiggle room. Has to show a benefit.
Yeah.
And owned or operated by the municipality. Again, I'd like to add just one other word, or sanctioned. I mean, sanctioned sounds good, but one other thing too is, municipal uses. We're supposed to be fixing the old municipal uses line in the bylaw, but there was already a philanthropic use line in the bylaw that says no in AR and R1, and no also in IC, and then yes everywhere else. So kind of we need to fix that too if we start to muck around with the rest of this. And then down below it says, for in this thing on the screen, religious, educational, and philanthropic uses. So that doesn't square with our own version of philanthropic on the use table. So we kind of have to get rid of the word philanthropic 413. Well, actually, it shows up in our use code, in our use table in 413, but it's different than religious and education. It's almost like a religious and education belongs in its own space.
Can we eliminate philanthropic if we're addressing it through specific uses? Library, museum.
Is that a municipal use, though? Again, we're talking about municipal uses. We already have philanthropic uses shown in our use code.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yep.
So we're just trying to square away the municipal uses words. And the things that I see here: transfer station, water, sewer, public works, public safety, community services, library, town hall offices, and then museum, I think, contemplates that it's owned and operated by the municipality. So that to me makes sense. And so the only fly in the ointment is a donated antique house that's
philanthropic,
non-conforming, that then would come under the philanthropic use, but it's a no already in our bylaws. It's no, but we have it. So we've allowed it. So I don't know how you can allow it unless you just look the other way and say, well, it's not that. It's a museum. It's educational purpose. Therefore, it's allowed. Maybe that's how you handle it.
Yeah, or right. And I do like, I mean, we can go back to that philanthropic because that's where we deal with like Schoolhouse Number 2 and other things that are people decide to give to the town, except they continue to own it.
Yeah, but it says no in our use.
Change. I would say change it to special permit in philanthropic.
Okay. Well, I was trying to not to mess with what was, in the same way that I thought public safety was included.
Well, maybe that's a separate cleanup, right? Like,
yeah,
we discovered that as part of doing this. Let's focus this museum on the municipal use, and then that's a separate cleanup.
Yeah. We'd have to get a better definition of philanthropic. I'd like to leave sleeping dogs lie and stay away from anything else on top of all of this. I just want to clean up municipal uses. I say museum. Just leave it.
What's the recommendation then under C5 and D5? Make it ZBA?
I say ZBA, yes. That's what I would say. In town center. Because it would be owned or operated by the municipality. So you'd have to sell the whole concept to the town in the first place. Then you'd have to come for a special permit. I'd be okay with that. I mean, you'd have to.
I'm good with that.
The municipality to own and operate it. I mean, that's the heavy lift.
Well, is it or and owned or operated? I mean, you could have a private museum staffed by the town, I guess.
Yeah, I think most of the words, again, when we did the research of what other towns said, it was owned or operated. So it's giving the town the flexibility to go, it's either this or that. If it's owned, then it's probably operated, or if it was owned, then they could sub it out. Or if it was operated, then it was owned by somebody else, but the town's operating it. You know, the town can structure it however they want to sell it to the town, but they have to sell the concept first, and then the special permit comes after. So you can't have the one without the other.
Well, again, I go back to the amount of impact in a neighborhood for a facility that's going to have traffic.
Well, that would be the fundamental. I mean, again, if somebody tries to put a museum, well, I mean, we got a museum up on Hill Road, right? Okay. There's only so much traffic. People don't think it's an issue. A special permit would have been the right way to handle it. I don't know how it got handled before. But to say no, just kind of.
Yeah, I like the special permit idea.
Again, these are municipal uses. These are things that the town needs to want first. And then to enable to put it in ag res or R1. I mean, if you got, hundreds of people who don't want it there, it's not going to pass in the first place. I mean, look at what's happened already. I mean, I think we need to give ourselves a way to do the things we want to do. That's what the town wants. They want to be able to do the things we all decide together we want to do, not to have some arbitrary impediment.
Well, if you live on a rural road,
all of Boxborough's rural roads, everything but 111. What are you saying?
But there's middle road, and then there's, I'm just trying to think of a scenario where the neighbors might think they don't care, or there may not be enough outcry. But if somebody decides to turn their house into a museum and the town buys it and owns and operates it, now all of a sudden you've got a stream of traffic coming in a section of town that you may not have anticipated. And yes, the special permit authority has to consider that, but you are opening up. I'm just saying, you're opening up spaces for things that were not originally contemplated.
No, I would put it the other way around. We originally contemplated all these things. Library, town hall offices, museum, community center, all those things were contemplated under municipal uses, and they were allowed. I mean, I don't want to go back and argue that whole argument all over again, but and many towns look at it that way. If it's municipally owned and operated, then it should be allowed anywhere because it takes the whole town's agreement to do it. It's very difficult to put something like that where people don't want it. And if what you're saying is, well, we're going to bulldoze, two neighbors so that the whole town, I mean, it's just, we haven't done that before. So why would we start now? So, and again, there's all this process. You have to buy it. You have to fund it. There's capital outlay. I mean, all these processes have to take place, and then it comes for a special permit. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities. I don't see, again, if we allowed it before and it hasn't been a problem, why all of a sudden are we going to say, no, we can't have it? I guess this whole thing used to say yes, basically.
A museum was never on our list other than.
It was a municipal use. It fell under municipal use. Or you could contend that it fell under municipal use if it was owned just like the museum that's up on Hill Road. That's probably how it got permitted. It's a municipal use. Oh yeah, you can do that.
Well, and you have a library as well that's on agricultural residential.
Hornets didn't come out when people said put library on residential land. So so I think special permit gives you the ability to cover for it, and we'll see why not. I mean, again, this is a small town. If we want a small little museum, then we should be able to have one, not just say no.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, you'd argue that it worked, right? The town spoke. Yeah. I mean, like it. Look at the fire station. Like, I mean, it's not, the town doesn't just choose, oh, we're going to plop it here, right? It has to go through a
process. Right?
And it's going to be what the community wants. And sometimes they're close votes, but voices are heard and the towns do what they do based on that.
Where would we want a museum
in
town? Like let's think at this a little bit different direction, I guess, is like, where would we want that? I mean, is that something that would support our whole, the village corridor kind of concept. You know what I mean? Is that something that we want to encourage in a certain area in town?
I
I mean,
think,
I understand like that we have a museum in different places all over town and whatever. And I think I wouldn't want to limit those little specialty things, but like, do we want to plan for what we want in town?
you would think that these things would be centered around the core, right?
Yeah.
These types of things.
You would think. Remember, this town never had a center. If the center it had was up at the corner of Middle and Hill, that was the town center.
I know, but now we're revisioning things.
Now we're changing that.
Need to control what we want to see. What is our vision for things? You know, is it to have that out in the east corner of the town, or is it to say have a walking downtown? You know, and
what if
there's a
the
reason
old
to go?
house at the top of Hill Road decided that they should make a museum next to the cemetery, and they wanted to give the house to the town for a museum? I'd say, sure, why not? And the neighbors might say, well, how much traffic is there going to be? Well, probably not an awful lot. I mean, we're not talking about what's the place in Acton there, the kid play place we used to bring the kids to, but
Danny's place.
Danny's place, yeah.
No, you mean
No, the treehouse. Yeah,
the Discovery
Oh,
Museum.
Discovery Museum, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so Discovery Museum, no. In residential, no. Okay, that's easy. I get that, but what we already did, the old police, it was the library became a police station, became a museum. Okay.
So I guess we have to put some bumpers on it, right? Like, how do we control it then? Because
With a special permit and
that Discovery Museum is very close to residential.
we don't control it. We shouldn't. The town controls it. That's the thing. I mean, the town, there's this process where if the town wants stuff like that, it needs our permission. All of us.
The Discovery Museum is a private operation, or
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a town run. So that's a different animal. But to the point, like, you wouldn't build that at the top of Hill Road if you're the town, right? I can't imagine. Maybe.
And new construction wouldn't probably be in that area. We wouldn't want to, I mean, we're trying to safeguard against that little house that gets donated to the town and has
Yep.
a whole lot of history to it. But like new development, should probably be placed where we would want it to be in town.
Right, and that's the job of this planning board, frankly. I think and Rebecca, maybe that's where you're going. Like, we should, as part of our overlay, right, and maybe underlying zoning even, like, that's an allowed use in that zone, right? Maybe it's subject to a special permit just to keep things in check, but I agree that, if you're talking new construction, where do you want to promote it? You want to promote it, right? But that's really the planning board and the planning function around what does that town center, that village core look like. 72 Stowe Road could become a perfect, like if somebody said, hey, we want to build an outdoor amphitheater and we want to have an indoor, museum, cultural center. Bang. That's your village core. Makes sense.
Okay, can I throw out a different scenario? What if the Boxborough Museum up on Middle Road decides to expand to 3 times its size, right? And modernize and become a cultural destination, right? It's a pre-existing non-conforming today, but if it more than doubles in size, then I think it has to go through at least the ZBA, correct?
To go through the ZBA if it expands at all.
I thought it has to expand a certain percentage above its footprint.
Well,
But anyway,
Yeah.
let's just assume it triples in size, okay? And it becomes a destination for, a regional destination.
but that's owned by the town. I mean, that's not going to the town. Somebody in the town is going to float the whole idea. Say, well, do we want to pay for all that? And then we're all going to walk into town meeting and go, well, who wants to pay for that? What's it going to do for us? And then the neighbors are going to come into town meeting and go, well, It's not going to do anything for me. How come?
Well, now you're leaving it up to town. I mean, yes, town meetings.
Town meeting, yes, I want to leave it to town meeting, exactly, because town meeting makes the decisions, not us. You're making the decision in advance. You're precluding the town being able to make a decision.
But that's what zoning is about, sort of providing protection so that, a small,
against outside influences, but this is municipal use. That's what we're talking about here.
You don't want to protect. You don't feel town needs to be protected from itself.
From itself. Okay, so that's what you're saying. The town needs to be protected from itself.
Government overreach.
No, I don't. I do not believe the town needs to be protected from itself. I think the town can protect itself. That's what votes are. That's
how why do we provide any zoning for municipal use?
Because we have to protect ourselves because we want to say where we want things, but we're okay. I'm okay with certain types of museums in residential because we already have it. Shows that it works. Why do we need to say no? We can't do it because we've already got it.
I think the proposal was to make it a special permit. Cindy, does that cover the concern that they triple in size?
That's splitting the baby in half right there.
So can I propose something? We are talking about this particular item as a longer projection, right? Potentially fall. We need to work through a couple of things like the water and sewer, get some more information. Alec, I know you have something that you want to bring forward this meeting, right? And I'm not tabling this right now. I'm just making a suggestion that we maybe come back to it at another point and revisit it because it's 9:30 right now. And what do we have to get through tonight? And can we push this down the road when we have more information in hand?
Madam Chairperson, I would echo that sentiment. I think the board has multiple questions here that really need to be answered before you trudge into whether we can or cannot apply things like a special permit. I think between now and your next meeting, I can help get some of those answers, but I would agree and encourage the board to move forward tonight.
Is there any discussion on that right now?
No, I'm supportive.
If it's a longer term thing,
I'm supportive of moving along.
Okay. All right, terrific. So I know, Mark, you had a few items on there. Cindy, you were up next. So Cindy, do you have anything to talk about tonight or do you need time to pull together your items?
I'm working on a couple of things on Scenic Road, Stonewall with Alec, but not ready for prime time. The same with the definitions. I have to talk to Alec about that. I did have a question that came up with the new document that Alec provided tonight, the economic feasibility analysis for the MBTA communities. And so I don't want to make more work for us, but I guess the question was, we put in a 10% minimum in the bylaw. Does that allow for us to increase that, or would that be a zoning bylaw amendment if we wanted to put up to 20% in there, Alec, or is that not something you can answer tonight?
No, that's a really great question. John and I had spoken about that at length when we initially proposed the language. The language that we gave you is intended to automatically kick up to the threshold of an EFA that's presented to the town and approved. So in this case, and I'll kind of insert my planner's report here, the town has received approval to require a minimum of 20%, or I should say require 20% firm, the 20% units in the MBTA community overlay district as affordable units, big A affordable, those being at 80% area median income. If the board wanted to permanently codify that, you could go ahead and insert that language in there. Ultimately, any EFA has to be approved by EOHLC. So once EOHLC gives us the sign off that MAPC did in fact prepare this correctly, then at that point, the state is saying, this is your minimum threshold, or this is your required threshold. I shouldn't say minimum or maximum. This is your required threshold. I can't in my mind envision a scenario where we would have a different EFA It's the town's impotence to prepare this EFA and prove we did exactly that. It's double what the state initially allowed us. So big win for the town. But if the board wanted to go back in and put more firm language that says 20% as provided in the EFA dated this, February, whatever that date was, January 30th, that's certainly a power of the board. I would just say wait until such time as we get our review and approval. We pass the compliance test, we get everything in writing back, and then go back in and start making changes to it. But if the board wants to, put that language in, certainly something you could do.
Okay, so I guess I would like to add that to the list under, I'm happy to take the lead on that. But it sounds like we got to wait. Is this months or how long before we hear back from the state?
Admittedly, we've been told the review on the MBTA communities overlays and various solutions is taking quite a while. That being said, a positive note, I received communication the first week in January from presumably our lead reviewer at EOHLC. They're working hand in hand with the Attorney General to make sure these things get done and out the door. So early indications are that they're already working on ours. I just have not seen an end result. The Attorney General typically works on a 90-day clip. So potentially as early as, I'd say, March 15th, let's call it. Very possible they ask for an extension, though.
Okay, so I guess I would like to add to the list, and I may end up taking off the definition of all the districts because I'm not sure there's value there, but I want to talk to Alec about that. So hopefully it's a swap, not adding more. And that I don't have anything else to present tonight, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Thanks, Alec. Mark, you were next on the list. Do you have anything to present this evening or talk about? Or are you still working on it?
Yeah, I'm still working on it. I mean, I didn't envision any of these for annual. I was thinking more of these for the fall town meeting. I mean, again, that was my understanding is that's why we instituted the fall town meeting, is to do our zoning articles then. So no big rush on that. And most of those are kind of minor.
Yeah, I think this whole list is probably going to be half and half. So I think that's totally valid. I'm working on stuff today, and some of it's short term, some of it's long term. So I don't have anything to present right now. Alec, you and Ed have a general zoning bylaw. Do you have something to review?
No, so I did ask Ed for additional language and for him to provide to me a recommendation. He has not been able to do that, so I have nothing for you this evening.
Okay, fair enough. And we talked about the ADU, right?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you all. I think, this is going to take us a while to get through all of it, but we'll do it. We'll do it. Next up is administrative business. We have one more set of meeting minutes, correct?
Yes, you do.
Actually, Alec, before we do that, let's look at your schedule. I've almost let that slip my mind, but we should talk about schedule as far as planning for what's getting presented when and where.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. That is a good point. God, I'm slipping. We haven't been going lately, guys. I'm slipping here. That is very good. Good to note, Madam Chairperson, especially because if the board wants me to submit a placeholder for any of these items, the warrant is open and it's only expected to remain open for a couple more weeks. And I'll note your next meeting is scheduled in 3 weeks, not 2 weeks. So it would be prudent tonight to at least submit placeholders for anything. Even if you don't intend to get a written recommendation into the warrant, that at least holds the place and we can finalize the language in March.
We're always here, aren't we? These warrants open and close before we even get to have like more than 2 meetings.
Yeah. This one did
Like-
sneak up on all of us.
Yeah.
It was we're up against it with the special town meeting as well. But yes, this is outlined for here. You are specifically here in the process. Monday, February 2nd. You can see placeholders are due 4 p.m. the date of your next meeting.
I don't want to ask for an extension already, but how firm is that February 23rd deadline? We haven't historically been given a little bit more time because they're important matters.
Yeah. The initial date that I was given was actually a week from today. And I did ask that be pushed out a couple weeks. What I would encourage the board to do is submit placeholders for anything you think you might get to the finish line, and then just peel back from there. It's easy to remove a placeholder. Adding something after the fact is not possible.
So we meet on Monday, February 23rd, and the warrant closes at the select board meeting. They close the warrant.
That's correct. Yes.
I mean, I think we got to put some placeholders in my opinion. Would we have to decide tonight to go to public hearing, or do we have another meeting to decide that?
So if on February 23rd, you instruct me to schedule a public hearing, I could schedule a public hearing for March 16th. So that would at least allow you to get the public hearing open, to provide your written recommendation if it's a one and done public hearing, and then still get the language in time for to make sure that your recommendation is written in. So you'd have a full week. But if your public hearing went after Monday, March 16th, then at that time you would have to you'd have to either make amendments on the floor for changes, make amendments in the motion like we did at the last town meeting more successfully, and you'd have to give your report as a verbal report, not a written report.
So you're the earliest. So to have a hearing on March 2nd, you need to know tonight?
Yes, I have to give 3 weeks notice to the printing company.
This is for any and all things that's listed on our list, right?
Yep.
Well,
except for any amendments to general bylaws. General bylaws, you don't need a public hearing. Zoning bylaws.
Amendments only, though. Only amendments, but not new. Correct?
For general bylaws, I don't know offhand if creating a new general bylaw requires a public hearing. I don't think we've done that in the past, no.
Yeah, I'm Googling it right now, and I think it might. So it would be good to get some clarification about that, Alec. I just did a fast Google.
I mean, I think we have a couple that are quick and easy. We could probably vote tonight to go to public hearing, and then you could post it. I mean, personally, like the ADU one, pretty straightforward. The design review board one, although we may want to hold that for B2, more discussion on B2. I mean, the ones I put forward, I'd like to bring to March town or spring town meeting, with the exception of the village center overlay. That one would be the fall. But we, I guess personally, I think we could, municipal use, we're not ready. That's probably the fall. Changes to IC, I'd like to say we could work on that and get that to a public hearing by March to get that in. Village center overlays the fall. Design guides, I think we could do that public hearing, get that done.
I definitely would want to do that one.
And I say, do we tie it? Do we get that to public hearing sooner rather than later, and then let the IC district follow in March? And we can always include in the design guide language we send over, although we have till March 23rd to change the language anyway, so there's time. Yeah. So I think those two, I would say we bring to a public hearing. And then ADU, where was that? ADU. Yeah. There's something else.
Cindy, wall bylaw revision looks like a probably easy thing to do.
You say that, but not so much. I got to talk to Alec. I mean, sure, put a place. You know, if we had to make a decision, put a placeholder in. But you know,
Well,
yeah.
between that and, I mean, what about scenic road bylaws?
Well, there's some overlap between them, so they would both end up probably getting tweaked. So yeah, put them both in, but
we can always pull stuff.
Yeah.
And Mark, you said your stuff, you're thinking fall.
Yeah, all that come out.
Hey, Mark, the specialty food definition, I thought that was low hanging fruit. Isn't that just to address beer and wine in the definition? Because the definition says beverages, but it doesn't include alcoholic beverages.
It could be that easy. I mean, if we want to just go for the low hanging fruit, put it in there then.
Rich, for the benefit of the planning board, do you want to share that back out? Because I don't think everybody got to see that one. I know you attended the ZBA special permit hearing. Mark obviously participated in that one. Do you want to clarify what that is? Because I would agree that's a very simple language change to consider, but I don't know that everyone is aware of the extent here.
I didn't go to that ZBA meeting.
Do you want me to speak to it real quick?
You can speak to it.
Okay. Madam Chairperson, I'm just going to bring down my screen share to speculate
go ahead.
here. So, in the fall of this year, the late summer, early fall, Thinking Flower Bakery, which is now open for operation, hit a bit of a hurdle in its permitting path. The building commissioner at the time of initial presentation and application did not understand or was not aware that the applicant intended to also offer wine and maybe beer service as well. So they were seeking a liquor license. Upon realization of that, the building commissioner did render a decision that the existing definition for a specialty food shop, while it references beverages, did not give carte blanche for alcoholic beverages. He felt strongly that that was a separate element and that should be subject to a true restaurant definition in your zoning bylaw. That kicked the permitting process up from by right citing to special permit of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Members of the EDC met and discussed this in part, and almost unanimously the EDC agreed that they felt the alcoholic beverage should be a component of specialty food shop, and that there was a path to getting to that, and had thought it may be prudent to make that correction sooner rather than later. So that's the simple item here. It's a simple tweak to an existing definition for specialty food shop to clarify that beverages could include alcoholic beverages.
So, right, beverages, comma, including beer and wine.
Well, I'd say including alcoholic beverages, because in this particular case, it might be mimosas and
alcoholic beverages covers.
Are they a restaurant? I'm just looking at the definition of a specialty food shop. It doesn't mention beverages at all. Am I missing something?
See,
they were a specialty food shop until this happened. No, I think it includes beverages, doesn't it?
No, it does not. The word beverage does not show up in either the footnote or the definition itself.
But we call it a cafe. We use the term cafe, such as a cafe or bakery that prepares or sells food items, the majority of which are freshly baked. So it needs to address the beverage component.
Yeah, and then additionally, there's a footnote 20 that's pertinent in the interpretation as well.
She was a specialty food shop until the alcoholic beverages came to being. And then it changed her permitting. So as you look at the definition, clearly we intended that people would be drinking at least coffee and tea. And so the alcohol component doesn't really change the intent. It's still a specialty food shop. preparing or selling food items, the majority of which are freshly baked or prepared on site, and beverages, right?
Well, the question is, where do you clarify it? And right, and in the definition is probably the place to do it. And so you'd say, such as a cafe, wine bar, or the wine bar was kind of it. I don't know if the wine bar would cover.
Well, you could
alcoholic.
just say prepares or sells food and beverage items.
Well, again, you want to make sure you include the alcoholic beverages.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask that, and I know this goes back, but why is a specialty food shop in this case different than a restaurant? Like, what's the distinguishing factor there?
In the interpretations that the building commissioner has given in the past, a lot of it has to do with where the food is baked or prepared. In this case, the food is baked on site, and therefore it can be considered a specialty food shop. If you look at Thinking Flower Bakery, for example, she is what many would classify, especially in the Metro Boston area, they would consider that a croissant shop. Her specialty item is her croissants. It's what she's cut her teeth on. It's what she knows best. If you try the quality of the food too, everything's exceptional, but those croissants knock them out of the park every time. I mean, it's the true bread and butter there. So if you're classifying that specialty food shop, it's the croissants. That really is the hinge point. But that being said, all of her product is baked on site. So she meets it in every other regard. In that consideration, when discussing the coffee element of it, the coffee was being prepared on site, but it's secondary to the bakery component. Although you could say cafe and bakery could easily include coffee. The hurdle that our zoning enforcement officer couldn't get past was the alcoholic beverage specifically. And so that is where he kicked the threshold up, classified it as a restaurant definition, and they chose to go forward. The business owner did.
So, I mean, if somebody wants to work on this, Mark, you said you're going to do it. So
Yeah.
Can you guys cook something up and bring it back to the group? But are we going to put
Yes.
this on for a placeholder?
Yeah. I think we can manage that, because I think we can do this within this sentence right here. So it's only a matter of a couple of words. So I'll circle back with Alec on this, and maybe Rich, and we'll figure something out. So yeah, hold place for that.
All right. We'll hold on the rest. Can we hold, Alec, we didn't get to talk about the parking calculations, but that could be a pretty light lift.
That sounds like a light lift.
Yeah, so we could do that and just hold 13, 14, and 15 for me. If we're putting in placeholders, because we could kick it if we need to. And then you're going to bring the farm ag, right? Or is that longer?
I would love to bring it forward, but candidly, you guys have a bunch on the plate already. I would rather make my own item secondary, so as not to take away from the work that the board's doing.
It's a placeholder for now, Alex. So I mean,
okay. I was gonna say the urgency is not there for mine, but I'll hold it in the meantime.
high aspirations.
Yeah.
So we have 10 placeholders. That's not terrible.
It's pretty ambitious.
Some of these are so easy. I mean, 80-year
They
revisions,
totally are.
3
Yeah, but
minutes.
think of how it goes in town meeting. Each thing has a discussion, pros and cons, and
We're
God
with some
knows.
public service to the community. We're giving people a lot to read in the warrant, right?
Mark, all likelihood will probably bring half of these, you know what I mean, at the end of the day. And
No,
so, I mean, it's just a placeholder.
Yeah.
Alec, is the GIS effort considered outside of this, the meets and bounds that you and I talked about? That's not a bylaw update? Is that
The meets and bounds description?
yes.
That would require revision of the zoning bylaw. We could also publish that as a secondary document. So if we could get it done sooner, we could publish it as a secondary document and hold it until such time as we could codify it. But that would require modification of the zoning bylaw if you want to insert the language.
Okay, so we're not going to tackle that for May, it sounds like.
No.
'Cause
Do you want to discuss with the whole board what you and I discussed as the exercise, how we could go about doing it, and the reasons why I agree it is a worthwhile task to undertake?
Yeah, if people still have the capacity to talk about it tonight, I think you can speak to it better than I can.
Yeah. Okay. So, Madam Chairperson, if you don't mind, Cindy and I met and had a pretty robust discussion on Thursday, and I do strongly agree with bringing forward district boundary language. So that's a meets and bounds description. What that looks like, if the board remembers, you've seen deeds over the years that have descriptions that say, 500 feet at northwest, however many degrees, 600 feet at whatever angle, and it continues until it creates a nice box around the parcel. The same exercise can be done for zoning districts. The reason that is valuable, especially in the case of Boxborough, is that we are currently working off of a picture of your zoning districts. Now, that's a perfectly acceptable method, but the Boxborough zoning bylaw does not explicitly define how we handle what's considered split zone lots. And it leaves a lot of room for ambiguity. Frankly, it makes it harder for your bylaw to be enforced. In the past, the ZBA has ruled based on where the structure is located on the lot. As an example, for example, a structure in the B district where it's split to the AR district in the rear, the use is for the B district. So therefore, everything has to be moved forward to the B district portion of the lot. That's not a perfect scenario, though. Someone could interpret it totally differently, and someone could take it to court to fight that interpretation quite easily. Then we get stuck in a legal battle. It makes a headache for the enforcement side of things. And so at least having a meets and bounds description and then further codifying it in your bylaw, there is value to it. The way we go about doing that, in my opinion, is to have your existing picture, your existing GIS layer, translated into a written description. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a solution, and it gets us a numerical value by which we can set the baseline and then make modifications in the future. I have to talk to MAPC. I have to figure out what the cost of that exercise is. I've not had a chance to connect with them since. They've been hard at work on our EFA, but I do think that's a valuable and worthwhile exercise that would assist myself and Ed in doing our job in the future.
Thank you. More discussion on that?
So, Alec, you might be asking the board down the road to authorize some spending of funds, or? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think that would be a very good use of your consulting budget funds, to have a GIS expert do that translation from a pictorial image to a written description. It's a very technical element. That being said, I don't know that it actually has to cost anything. Each town is given a certain amount of just basic technical assistance dollars, not a lot, but a little. There are some real GIS experts over at MAPC, so it at least bears me having a discussion first. Can you do this under basic technical assistance, at which point it costs the town $0? And if not, I would have them prepare a scope of work and I would bring it back to the board.
Yeah,
Hopefully
so
that's under $5,000.
I believe it can be done. It comes down to what they typically appropriate for their general technical assistance. I don't have a good handle on that number, and so I don't want to overcommit you and have you signing away dollars that you don't need to spend.
Okay, so that sounds like not a Springtown meeting activity then. Between now and then, it doesn't sound like they're going to get that done. So kick that to fall on your list. And then on your list, you just if you could add the extra line about the EFA, the 20% 80 MBTA threshold, what am I trying to say? The feasibility study proposal to bring it up to 20%. Just put that on the list, but we wouldn't bring that until fall either, it sounds like.
I have updated it to reflect the MBTA community overlay 20%.
Great, thank you.
Can you recirculate this to board members so that we have like clear marching orders of where we left things off?
Yes, can do.
Are there any of these that we want to bring to public hearing before, like, are there
When
any,
do we start public hearings?
right? Some, like,
I feel like we need to start on the 23rd, Rich. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but there's only 3 hearings potential, right? Did I get that right?
there's, Alec, what was the schedule?
There are up to 5 public hearings,
Up to
which
5.
I can,
Gotcha.
yeah, I can encapsulate that all in one public hearing notice, but it doesn't force you to take them all up on night 1. I can do it in one public hearing notice, and you can choose which to take them up in which order in whichever order. Yeah.
But
So
that
we
doesn't
could-
help the public kind of
Yeah.
know which one to
Yeah, we should.
discuss.
Yeah, no, it's good to let people know when we're going to talk about what.
Yeah, if someone has a strong opinion about, the third one, they shouldn't have to sit through the first 2.
Right.
If I could, Madam Chairperson, I think at minimum, if you schedule those 5 for a public hearing on the 23rd, at minimum, the discussion on the item could be, we do not have a deliverable prepared for this item, and we will not be bringing this revision forward to annual town meeting.
Okay, say that again, Alec. You said those 5, meaning
So it would be changes to the IC district or
Can you
B2.
can you put the thing back up, Alec? Sorry.
Yep. So the ones that I would put to public hearing notice would include this changes to the IC district, revisions to design guidelines, the specialty food definition, parking calculations, and the ADE revisions.
and you need to just double check to make sure that the generals don't need that same posting, Alec,
Yes, I will double check.
as a new bylaw. You know what I mean? Or maybe there's a way to sneak it in someplace, but I think like the plastics is like new. That's new. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think I'm wondering if that one would just need to be all, done the same way, but.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll look back at your past warrants, because you've done, for example, you did your MS4 storm pre and post construction stormwater very recently. We did the tree protection and preservation. I have to just look back at the procedure we followed there, so I can get an answer to that tomorrow. But
I think actually we didn't have it for the tree protection one though, did we? We didn't have public hearing.
that's my recollection as well, is that we didn't at the time.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
And then potentially the farm ag. So maybe 6 of these in total. My assumption is when we kick off the public hearing, before we dive into the meat of any in particular that we think we're ready to go with, we could just do a quick round, and anyone who's bringing forward language who feels, okay, this really isn't ready to go to prime time, can start the public hearing off by saying, this one item, one of the 6, will not be ready for annual town meeting. So let's proceed to the ones that are prepared.
So if we open them all together though, don't we have to close them all together too? Which gets a little funky because some things take a longer time than others, right?
So you would continue the public hearing until you're ready to render a recommendation on all of them?
On all of them at the same time.
Yes. And then you would just make a recommendation that we advance the following articles to town meeting. And you would have 3 public hearings before you'd have to make that recommendation.
So
and you
we
would
would
still get everything in writing.
So we would fish or cut bait by the time we get to the deadline for the written warrant. the 23rd of March, whatever that date is.
Yeah. You would have 3 public hearings before you have to make that decision.
Yeah, we've never done it that way before, so I just want to feel confident that that's the right way we want to go about it. I understand why it makes sense at this point, but clean and tidy, that's what I like.
So what does the public notice say? That the planning board is holding a public hearing on various changes to the zoning bylaw and specifically, and then you list changes to the IC district, design, you list them all, and then is that, because to the point that people want to know what they're coming to, right?
Yes, so there would be a general forward that the planning board is considering changes to the zoning bylaw. Those changes would include, and then we would do a bulleted list of about 2-sentence description to each one. And then there would be the catch-all language at the end that would say, and other revisions to sections blank through blank of the Boxborough zoning bylaw in order to facilitate the changes listed above. So that would catch all that, okay, section 2.6, you have to make an amendment for design guidelines, but then we realize, oh, something over in section 4 also needs a quick tweak. Now we have the catch-all language that allows you to do both. So yes, we do give an explicit heads up to the public that we will be talking about this, while also giving you enough coverage that you can, slide over to another section to facilitate the change originally described.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead, Rich. Finish your
No,
thought.
I'm just going to say, I guess I'm okay. I mean, ideally, each one is on its own, but for expediency, that's cumbersome, right? You're opening up 10 different hearings. But then you can close the hearing and vote on it, and you move on, and you're done with it. So I don't know if is it just as easy to issue, however many you highlighted here, 5 different public hearings?
No, to do it so I will note it is a generally accepted practice to do it in one hearing notice.
Huh.
Every different hearing notice we do is another couple $100 that we have to pay.
Whoa! So we're saving money. Okay.
Yes.
Now you're speaking my language. Saving money. Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you.
Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, I know Boxborough News covers our meetings and they're doing a great job sort of describing what's going on, but between Boxborough News, hopefully can get the messaging out a little bit more clearly about what these hearings are, because I know the legal notices don't always specify. So I guess I would hope that we get, sort of weekly coverage up through the hearings about what the hearing, including what the hearings are about. And also perhaps, Alec, you can add put a hyperlink or something on the website, town website, identifying that these hearings are going to be happening and gives it a blurb. Because I just think we need to reach out to the public a little bit more as best we can about these changes before town meeting.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'd like to ask the board that the board reach out when they feel like they're ready to present. So like if on the 23rd, Rich, you're ready to talk about the IC district, I'd like to have a date sure that people will be ready for that on the 23rd. So if you could reach out to Alec and myself and just let us have a heads up that we know that is coming. Like today, several of ours were not ready, not fully cooked to be able to share. So it would be good to go into it knowing who's got what, so that we can plan for our night, because it's a lot, or it could be a massive gap if we're not ready. So if you don't mind, that would be helpful.
Do we need to vote to go to hearing, or do we?
Yes. So, Madam Chairperson, I would ask you to seek a motion authorizing the town planner to publish a public hearing notice for the 6 zoning bylaws noted previously.
So
Thank you, Rich. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Rich and seconded by Chris. Thank you. Any discussion?
So there were some that we didn't include, but I think we're still on the maybe list. We could always add a public hearing at the next meeting but it would not be till March 16th, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's what would happen. We wouldn't be able to hear it on the 23rd necessarily.
Right.
But I'm sorry, could we see the list again? Because yeah, that's a good point, Rich. If we don't, are we committing to only these 6, given the momentum that we start to get?
We're committing to these 6 for 3 public hearings. There's still an opportunity at the next meeting to pull something in for a 1 public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not understand that.
Oh, because we need to have 3, right?
We have the room on the calendar to have 3 public hearings between now and town meeting, 3 different dates, right?
We don't
That's
have to.
between now and when the warrant closes.
How many hearings do we have to have for a given article?
1. Only 1. You
Okay.
can do it all in 1 hearing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we could have public hearings going right up to town meeting. The issue is the warrant, you got to have by a certain date language in,
If you want it in the warrant, right?
if you want it in the warrant.
Yeah,
That's
no,
correct.
better. Okay.
Wait, so you highlighted something blue. Where happened to the blue highlight?
There's like a gray, or I'm just cross-eyed.
Sorry, everybody. To clarify, oh no, that was not what I wanted to do.
No.
To clarify,
There we go. Okay.
the bright green ones are the ones I'm bringing to hearing notice.
Okay, thanks. I got confused.
But the others can still go
We
to,
can still listen. Yeah, we can still do those. They just don't require the same.
Yes, the ones shown in yellow can be done without public hearing. The ones shown in neon green will need a public hearing notice.
so the rodent fertilizers and rodenticides is a general bylaw.
It's based on what I'm finding, it's either going to be a general bylaw, or in at least one case, it would require a home rule petition.
Okay. Scenic roads bylaw, that's a general bylaw. That's not a zoning. Okay.
That's correct.
I understand the method to your madness.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Any other discussion on this? I'm not seeing any or hearing any. As I see you, let's take a vote. Chris Doughty,
Jody, aye.
Mark White,
White eye.
Cindy Markowitz,
Markwood's eye.
Rich Gazardi,
Is already
and Werner I. Thank you all. Now we can talk about the last minutes. Alec, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any comments on the January 21st meeting minutes?
line 141. EDC proposed its business brunch to February or March. We postponed it indefinitely, I believe, till later in the year.
Yes.
So we postponed it because it was really going to be January. We postponed it to February, March. We've now pushed it out of February, March. So postponed its business brunch from February, March to later in the year. Does that capture it correctly, Alec?
Yep.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the January 21st, 2026 meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mark and seconded by Cindy. Any discussion? Okay, as I see you, Chris Doughty,
Jody, aye.
Mark White,
White eye.
Cindy Markowitz,
Markwood's eye.
Rich Gazardi,
Gazardi, aye.
and Werner I. Thank you. Recently received correspondence, Alec. Anything of note that besides notices?
Notices as well as mentioned earlier in the meeting, the town's consultant MAPC for the MBTA Communities District, they did provide the results of our EFA as noted at the previous agenda item. The results of that showed the town could require 20% of all units proposed in the district be at 80% area median income or considered affordable and eligible for the town's subsidized housing inventory. That's more than double that is double the state's initial threshold set. And so I think both this board as well as the housing board would agree that's great news. I have submitted those results to the state for review and incorporation. We expect full approval. It's just a matter of they have to review it and confirm everything was done appropriately. MAPC has done dozens of these though, so we know it was done just as that appropriately.
So Al, can I just ask in round numbers, we had approved a plan that could allow up to 118 units. Is that correct?
Roundabout. Yeah, I think it was a few more than that, but yes, roundabout.
So the 10% could be potentially 11 or 12 units, and 20% then could potentially be 22 to 24 units. Is the math right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Yep. And I'll note it would be tied to the proposal. So let's say, for example, one of the apartment buildings is being proposed for redevelopment. That would net 10 units in total. 2 of those units would have to be affordable units.
Any other discussion? Okay, why don't you roll into your planner's report, Alec?
All right. So a couple members of this board, or at least Rebecca, maybe it was only you actually, are chairs of other boards and committees that we support and may have seen a press release go out last month. Last month, I declared my intent to work with the various boards and committees that the Office of Land Use and Permitting support in order to get all of their meetings up, recorded, or to get them up onto a virtual format and recorded for publication on BXB-TV. I mentioned this at your last meeting too, but I'll be meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals tomorrow night for their regularly scheduled meeting. We'll be discussing whether or not to bring them online, but I want to continue to beat the drum and help rally that this is a project I think a lot of boards and committees will support. We've already heard insight from other boards and committees outside the scope of land use and permitting that they now intend to do the same. So I'm seeing this migration and broadcasting the fact that we're going to continue working to get your various meetings up and available to the public for on-demand service at your convenience.
Thanks, Alec. Enclave.
All right. So I had my meeting with Sue Carter and Ed Cataldo, those being the consulting engineer for the planning board, as well as the town zoning enforcement officer. Ian and I both met with them, and we wanted to highlight 3 areas in particular. So it's our intent to continue working with Toll Brothers to make sure these items get done and satisfied, namely this spring. So once the snow melts, will be a good opportunity to schedule hopefully final site visits with final as-builts. We noted during the meeting that there were some changes made to the grading and drainage from what was originally proposed. The applicant will need to submit a minor modification and their engineer will need to certify the calculations of those items. So expect that you would see at minimum a minor modification submitted prior to any final as-built. So you would review first the changes being made and then as-builts that were submitted after the fact. That would be in tandem with a site visit. I think it would make sense to do a site visit with the full board at that time. Additionally, prior to the release of the bond, we noted the applicant will need to remove temporary structures and update some signage on the site. So Sue and I have been discussing with them for a time now that some of the emergency signage in particular needs to be installed or needs to be updated. And ultimately, Ed will need to conduct an evaluation of some of the sidewalks. So in particular, we noted areas where stone structures separated at driveways and in the sidewalks themselves potentially create violations of building code. So we'll have to work hand in hand with the applicant to have either those resolved, or they would have to demonstrate for some reason that they're obligated to receive a waiver. But ultimately, the onus is on them in all regards. They need to demonstrate why they are or are not subject to compliance with certain building codes. It's not our job to do that for them. So in cases where they can't demonstrate that, they would, of course, have to come up to compliance. That accumulates a total of about 6 or 7 items that the homeowners association had provided in their own update and memo to the board that they felt were concerns or hesitations. I'll note that the majority of those items they provided were mostly civil items or items they themselves had already resolved. But of the ones provided, some of those did overlap with previous concerns Sue and I had expressed back to the applicant, Toll Brothers. And so we hope to continue working with them this spring to bring forward both that minor modification, corrections to any changes that need to be made for building code purposes, and ultimately the final as-builts once everything's wrapped up. But still stuff that needs to be done, as we discussed.
Thanks, Alec. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, great. Keep us in the loop. Committee reports. CPC, Chris.
Yeah, nothing new there. All the draft articles are just waiting.
Thank you. Nothing for the DRB. EDC, Rich?
Nope, nothing new to report. I reported at our last meeting.
Thanks. Magic, Mark White?
No meeting until March.
Okay. Water resources, Cindy?
Just to follow up, I had mentioned last meeting that Weston and Sampson were willing to come and do a presentation to the planning board and any other interested boards on and I think we settled on March 16th, Rebecca. I think that was the date you
I think so.
indicated. So that'll be on the planning board's agenda. And again, it'll probably be a 10 or 15-minute presentation and probably some time for Q&A, but that will be good for the board to hear. And I think that might stimulate some further discussion about things we'd like to see in future updates on that report.
Great, thank you. And the Boxborough Leadership Forum, we have not met again, so that I have nothing to report on. That's the end of our agenda, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Rebecca, quick question. When is the Leadership Forum? When do they meet next? And
I don't know that we have a next meeting yet.
End of
Probably one before a special town meeting, no?
Right. Let me just see if I can find it.
February 26th was the last thing I saw. I don't know if that was a suggested
You know
date.
what? Actually, we were going all over. Now you're reminding me. Chris,
Yeah.
we were going all over the place trying to nail down a date, and which is like herding cats. Like there's so many people. So that has not been finalized yet. But I think we threw out a couple dates, and we just have to make sure we find one for everybody because it's been very challenging with everybody being so involved.
And my only other comment before we motion adjourn. So Cindy, you talked about bringing Weston and Sampson, and I think so we're in a period now where we have the time. Obviously, we're going to be working on articles, just talked about tonight, but getting other interests in, like I know the Economic Development Committee, we're going to be pushing off the Economic Development Plan, so I'm sure that'll have some interest by the planning board. So maybe there's a joint meeting there at some point. That's up to the chair, you, Rebecca, and the chair of the EDC. But then also what's noticeably absent from this list of zoning bylaw changes are anything to do with housing. And, I don't know where things stand with the housing production plan or the long range housing plan. Is there some engagement with the housing board? Because I'd be open to some future housing adjustments, but it's noticeably absent right now. So I don't know. Is that something we want to put on a future agenda? I just throw that out there.
Do we have any update on that reporting? Because we've been asking we've been hoping for that for many, many years.
Great question. So in the month of December, the housing board met. I attended their meeting. We discussed various finance mechanisms because that's a key element to this plan. We ultimately settled on a path by which we applied for regional funding in the month of December, much like we did for the economic development plan last year. We would then leverage that regional funding for a state grant application, noting in particular that this is high on the state's priority list to do housing production plans like these, especially ones like ours where we can get creative, being over 10%. So we feel quite confident that we'll be successful in that funding path. Ultimately, the board erred on that decision, knowing that it does delay our start of work until January of 2027. However, Ian is working with members of the housing board to do midpoint deliverables between now and January 1st, namely preparing a presentation this summer, a large, robust public forum on housing production, the existing housing demographics, doing some of that initial research and presentation, as well as midpoint engagement opportunities for people to sign up and participate in the housing production plan, noting that housing production plans do require quite a great deal of survey outreach, almost always. So this would be an opportunity over the course of this year to both build awareness of the project as well as building that early mailing list that they'll use later on.
So I would say that when we have some product, then we're sitting down and having a bit of a powwow.
Agree. Thank you. Appreciate the update on that.
Will you continue to keep us informed about housing board activities, Alec? I think it's really, when we do our committee reports, we don't have a liaison, and that might be an opportunity for you at least to report back to us, if no one, or Ian. Just include that maybe on the list because we don't have that as a standing committee report, but I'd really like to hear more as this goes forward.
Yeah, going into the coming year, the town is intending to both do an open space and recreation plan and a housing production plan, both in calendar year 2027. So Ian, if you want to add that to the recurring list. So when we give planners reports, because Ian's knocking it out of the park, he's doing a great job. Ian, if you have actual updates that you want to give, just let Rebecca and I know, and we'll make sure to yield time during the planners report for you to give those updates.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Right now, March 2nd probably looks like the first time we'll have a good update coming off of the town hall info night. Definitely have some plenty of good input following that I'd be happy to share with you guys.
Great.
Perfect. Thanks all. Okay, any other discussion?
Got one thing.
Go ahead, Mark.
At our last meeting, I tried to remind us to do the planning board alternate. You were supposed to put it on the agenda, and it's not on our agenda again. Do you need a vote from us to do that, or how would you like to handle it?
No, we do not need a vote. It just didn't get put on the agenda. It was not intentional, Mark.
Didn't say it was.
Do we need to? Well, there's a little tone coming out, just a little. Alec, could we just at least reach out to both of the applicants and find out if they're still both interested in this? It's been some time since they've both done that.
Yep. I can inquire about both their interest level and their availability for your next proceeding meetings.
Thank you. And then, pending that, we'll have it on the agenda.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Rich and seconded by Mark. Thank you both. Discussion? Okay, as I see you, Chris Dowdy.
Dowdy, aye.
Mark White.
White eye.
Rich Gazzardi.
Gazzardi, aye.
Cindy Markowitz.
Markowitz, aye.
And Werner, aye. Okay, thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Have a good night.